Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day. And above all else, that you're looking after yourselves and one another. Ladies and gentlemen, the gang are back. We are here to finish up our Genesis triple play with episode 3. We're going to be doing our ranking the albums version 2.0. Now, before I get into the specifics of everything here, I want to welcome back to the channel the gang, Bill Schuster. How's it going, Bill?
Excellent, Armando. Glad to be here. Glad to see us all four together here. Looking forward to this.
It's been a while. It's been a while. And as I see on my screen below me here, Mr. Ken Cheshire. How's it going, Ken? You're muted.
Going well.
There you go.
Oh,
We're
really?
having.
There you go. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, our blooper for the episode. And as
Yeah,
I
well,
look on my screen here, good to have you here, Ken. The man of the hour. I know how you love being called that. Mr. Jim Bricker. How's it going, Jim? As we carry on, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. We are going to split this up into two segments, seeing as how Genesis have 15 albums. Now, I did this episode, this ranking a year ago with Andrew Cox, and we didn't include from Genesis to Revelation and calling all stations, but we decided to redo this, and we are going to include this time all 15 albums. So, the reason why we're going to split this up into two episodes is to make it more palatable for you, the viewers, to watch, and to make it easier for us old gentlemen here that need to take a pee break now and again to basically go take a pee break now and again. You know what? We're all getting up there, guys. So it is what it is. So in part one, we're going to be covering albums 15 to 9, and in part two, we are going to be covering albums 8 to 1. Okay. So as I see on my screen, the host always goes last. Okay. Because again, my mom brought me up right. So as I look on my screen, we're going to go to, we're going to start with Bill, Jim, and then Kent. So over to Bill.
All right. Thank you, sir. Let's get this party started. All right. Once upon a time, there was a very successful classic progressive rock band. They decided to release an album, a late career album, missing a key member. It was a bit of a droning album, kind of mushy, kind of not a whole lot going on in it. But, well, what are you going to do? Yes, that's right, folks. It's the. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant calling all stations.
Did you
There
now?
you go. I get them confused sometimes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the hat. It's making them confused right now. So forgive them.
I mean, really, calling all stations. I give them credit for trying after Phil left, but they missed a perfect opportunity to get one Mr. Chester Thompson as an official member on drums. Who better? Who else? No one else besides Chester should have played on that album if Phil was not going to be there. But they didn't need him. They didn't want anybody else, apparently. So they had two fill in drummers, which are both fine, but Chester was a Genesis drummer. So I don't know what they were thinking. I have nothing against Ray as a singer. Ray Wilson is a decent singer. I have him on some other albums, but compared to the personality that both Peter and Phil were able to bring as frontmen, as vocalists, Ray was just kind of mediocre. Sorry, Ray. I mean, they didn't give him great material to work with, I don't think. It just seemed, as I said, kind of drudgy, kind of murky, kind of. It was torturous for me to listen to this twice in preparation for this episode. I hadn't listened to it in a very long time, and I was hoping I was going to be less disappointed, but I was not. I originally had this at 14, but I did not enjoy it to the point that it made me flip it all the way to the bottom spot. So sorry, guys, you needed a strong producer, less songs, shorter songs, more sonic variety, and Chester on drums. Nice try, but nope. Calling all stations is the bottom of my barrel.
Okay. All right. Yeah. What can I say about that? The only thing I can say is that, yeah, Chester Thompson, I mean, he asked to be, from what I read, I didn't even know this. From what I read, he asked to be, a full-fledged member of the band and, for touring and being on the album. And they said, no, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to go in a different direction. What direction? I don't know. But I mean, yeah. Okay. Interesting. Good choice. So, understandable choice, I'd say. All right.
It's going to be somebody's favorite now. Watch.
There you go.
It could happen.
No, you never
It's
know.
true.
You never
Good.
know. As he looks up. Okay. Down to Jim.
Hello, hello.
Your mic's working.
It is. It is.
Good. Good to know.
In the name of variety, I claim a different number 15. Although it was neck and neck for a while. And my number 15 is the final Phil album. It is We Can't Dance. Um, it's just it's just too much of a mediocre thing. I mean, there's a couple of really great tracks on this album. I mean, Fading Lights is fantastic. Driving the Last Bike is pretty darn good. Even Hold On My Heart as a ballad, I'll take it. It's okay. It's pretty nicely done. But, they could have pruned this album by at least a third and had a really, really strong release as opposed to just having it be, let's fill it to the brim of the 72 minutes we think we have available to us. Um, yeah, Fading Lights would have been the perfect complete career capstone for the band. And I wish they had left it like that. Um, but yeah, We Can't Dance is my number 15.
All right. All right.
See
Okay.
if I'm the odd man out.
We'll see. We'll see. All right. Ken.
Okay. I'm going to echo everything Bill said. My number 15 is Calling All Stations. I don't hate it. I think it's interesting. Um, Ray Wilson as a vocalist is, not bad. I just think this was the wrong vehicle. I too don't understand why Banks and Rutherford made some of the decisions they made for this. Um, and it could just be that Phil was a very strong influence on the decisions in which the band, made at that, up until this time. But anyway, yeah, uh, I don't mind listening to it, but it's not my go-to. So yeah, my number 15, Calling All Stations.
Okay. My number 15, ladies and gentlemen, 3 for 3, Calling All Stations. Yes. Jim, you are the odd man out. Yes.
Maybe that should be my new moniker as opposed to Man of the Hour.
No, I like man.
Or combine the
fits
two,
you.
be Odd Man of the Hour.
Hey, there we
Hey.
go.
Well, we'll see.
Man on the outs.
Yeah, Calling All Stations. Oh boy. What were you thinking? I don't know what to say about this album. No, it's not a good album. It's just the songs to me are very depressing, the arrangements. The fact that they, kudos, I guess, that they were using Nick DiVigilio on drums for some of the tracks. As a session musician, they should have used Chester Thompson. And I agree with him. I would have been pissed off too. I mean, you contribute all your time and effort over the years since 77. He was basically a member of the live band. So why not just have him come in? and be a part of it, especially when he's asking to be a part of it. But the songs are just not memorable. There's nothing here that grabs me at all. It's not a good album. So yeah, that's my number 15, Calling All Stations. All right. Over to Bill.
All right, number 14. This was originally my last until Calling All Stations made me change my mind. I found the early years a little more interesting than I thought. So, yeah, number 14 is In the Beginning. Hey, wait, I did it again, didn't I?
Yeah, you did it again.
Huh. Actually, this is a contemporary. And Jonathan King ignored the fact that this American band actually existed in 1969 and plowed ahead with the name Genesis anyway. So yes, this is that famous band for those who were wondering. It's I haven't listened to this in years. I couldn't even tell you what it sounded like. And I promise this is the last time I'll pull this switcheroo.
Mm-hmm.
Remains to be seen.
Promises.
Yeah, really. This is my odd little 2-disc version of From Genesis to Revelation that has lots of extra tracks and everything, but it has the full original album on here. It's actually kind of a decent album. I mean, you know the history of this album. Generally, people compare it to the Bee Gees of that era. And it's not a bad album. It's a pleasant little album if you're in the mood for just kind of a mainstream, slightly odd mid 60s, late 60s pop album. So nothing terrible about it. Peter already has his voice there. They're still working on some of the instrumental stuff, but I kind of feel like Jonathan King was maybe overwhelming them a bit with the production, with strings and such, which would be fine for the music of that time. It's just not necessarily fine for what Genesis would become. So it's an oddball in the catalog, but it's not bad. It's a pleasant listen every once in a great while. That's 14.
Okay. Down to Jim.
Yep. All right. We'll finish off. I'll put the nail in the heart of Calling All Stations here. I had thought that this was going to be my bottom one too, but as I just kind of tried to think about it a bit more objectively, I've heard Calling All Stations less than We Can't Dance. And if I had to choose between those two to listen to, I'd probably pick Calling All Stations because it's just not as, ubiquitous as we can't dance is. There's a lot of sameness through the album. It's got a very kind of monotone feel to it. There's not a lot of dynamics going on. Like you were saying, Bill, Ray Wilson's not bad, but frankly, even if they had gotten Kevin Gilbert, to be in that band, it would have been a thankless task for anyone to take that seat because Phil was Phil. I mean, he had had a decade and a half of becoming the voice of that band, and certainly as a strong third member in the arrangements, in addition to compositions and just, that drum sound. Um, it's it was kind of doomed to failure, I think. But I'd rather kind of tiptoe through that than weed my way through, Jesus He Knows Me or, No Son of Mine or any of the other umpteen ballads that are on We Can't Dance. So yeah, it's done. Calling All Stations, 14.
All right. Okay. Ken.
Number 14 for me is Trespass. I don't have much to say about this. It's an okay album. I think the instrumentation is good. My favorite song off of it is The Knife. But yeah, I mean, none of these albums are terrible for me. But yeah, if you're gonna rank them, something's gonna end up at the bottom of the stack. But it just doesn't overall just doesn't excite me. So, and this is just about as early on in the band as you can get. So I think they can they deserve a little bit of flack, for it. So, and forgiveness, it took them a while, I think. So yeah, 14 Trespass.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Some would
Okay.
say shots fired over that one, brother, but
And did I hear a gun being cocked? Like,
Hey,
but yeah, I get what you're saying. Um, my number 14, ladies and gentlemen, is from Genesis to Revelation. Oh boy. You know, this is not even credited by the band members themselves as an official Genesis album. Um, you know, it's it's a pop album. It's basically, according to the band members, them trying to do their best Bee Gees pastiche. You know what I mean? In terms of the arrangements and the vocals and stuff. So, The Silent Sun is a single, okay. And when the sour turns to sweet, there's a reason why this sold 600 copies in total. And why they got dropped by Decca after this. So yeah, it's not memorable. It's not one I would go to at all. But yeah, that's my number 14 from Genesis to Revelation. All right, back over to Bill.
Number 13, I'm going to follow up Ken here. I'm putting Trespass in at number 13. And again, I'll also echo Ken again. It's nothing wrong with this album. I actually like this album well enough, but it's still Genesis in the process of becoming Genesis. I think that would happen on the following album. So yeah, it's solid. It definitely is a big step up compositionally and progressively as far as the stereotypical prog rock. It's very much more so in that vein than the debut. So, and I think even though Phil's not here, John Mayhew actually does a pretty decent job on the drums. I think he tends to get short shrift because Phil did follow him and was such an amazing drummer for so long. So he kind of gets left behind in the dust. And Ant Phillips, of course, well, he kind of set the sound that Steve Hackett picked up later.
Mhm.
I don't think Steve would have completely sounded like he did with the band without Ant laying down that foundation. So it's pretty valuable in that respect. Ant was a very important member of the band at this time. The rest of the guys would probably even say the most important member. So number 13, Trespass.
Interesting choice. Okay. All right. Jim.
Yes, my number 13 is from Genesis to Revelation. I think pretty much everything about that has been said, except for me, I hear like a little bit of like early Pink Floyd in here as well. Not much. I mean, definitely you get the overwhelming Bee Gees feel, and for me, you've got sour turns to sweet in the beginning, in hiding, Silent Sun, in Limbo. I mean, for those are the standouts on the album, but that's like 5 out of 13 tracks. Um, and again, I'm still more likely to revisit this than I am, We Can't Dance or Calling All Stations. What I do find interesting is, as we're recording this, there's, all these rumblings going around about a 50th anniversary of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which will probably be 52, the 52nd anniversary by the time they release it. But,
Mhm.
Tony Banks is going out there talking about how they are doing an anniversary release for From Genesis to Revelation, which is kind of a head scratcher.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sweet
Um,
Jesus. Okay.
yeah, so who knows what I doubt that there's new things that they're finding. I mean, I would guess between Archives 1 and the bonus disc from like the Genesis 70 to 75 box, they've got everything that was in the cupboards, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, my number 13 from Genesis to Revelation. we're all there. It's all out.
Okay. All right. Ken.
My 13 is Nursery Crime. I think most famously known for the musical box. Um, I enjoy this album. There it is. The other,
Okay.
yeah.
Short and
There-
sweet, man.
Well, I mean,
I think
yeah.
that was 8 words. I think that was like 8 words in total.
Well, yeah, keeping it under 10. The I don't know. Like I said, for me these lists, it would probably be different tomorrow. It just depends on how it hits me at any particular time, and especially when I do a re-listen every maybe couple of years, things strike me differently as I get older. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of my love for some of these albums is curiosity, which is why some of the ones y'all have already mentioned hasn't shown up on mine yet. So, but anyway, Bill, you'll recover.
He's just he is so taken aback by it. Oh my God. All right. No, okay.
Don't
that's
listen.
fair.
Don't listen. It's okay.
Good for you. Okay. Okay. No.
Calm down,
Interesting.
It's
Cynthia.
okay.
We'll
It's
survive.
okay, Harold. Everyone still likes you.
You named her Cynthia? Jesus, Murphy. Okay.
That
All right.
No,
actually
that's
is a
her name.
character.
That's her name. Okay.
They
See, I
called her
didn't know
Cynthia.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay. Moving on. My number 13 is We Can't Dance. Um, I've had this ever since it came out, and I enjoyed it when it first came out. I thought it was a really strong album. Mm, there are good songs on here. I mean, everyone knows the hits, No Son of Mine, Jesus, He Knows Me, which I do think is still hilarious if you've seen the video for it. But he hit the nail on the head, with that lyrically with that song. Driving the Last Spike, which is good. I like. I Can't Dance. I never really like. I'm sorry. Um, Never a Time. Ugh. Dreaming While You Sleep is a good track. Tell Me Why. Ugh. Um, Living Forever. Ugh. That's just
I'm sensing a
my
theme.
heart. Ugh. But they do finish strong with Fading Lights. I just think that this, as I listened to it over the years, I just think it's a very uneven album. And in terms of musical output, just in terms of the arrangements of the songs and the lyrical ideas, excuse me. I do think that Fading Lights is a strong way to end the album. It's a strong way to end Collins's tenure with the band. I saw them on this tour, the dance tour, and they were amazing. But yeah, it hasn't held up well over the years, so that's why it's number 13 for me. It's just not a consistent album in terms of songs. So that is my number 13. We Can't Dance.
Let me carry on from there with my number 12. We Can't Dance. I actually enjoyed this more than I expected to re-listening to it. I expected to really trash it, but oddly enough, I found myself enjoying all of those hits that were ridiculously overplayed when this album was out. Even I Can't Dance, which I never liked before, I actually found myself enjoying it because it sounded so different. They were trying new things sonically on this album. I think it's definitely a case of the CD era where it could have definitely used some pruning. You could knock a good 4 or 5 songs off here, and you still have a pretty lengthy, full album. Take some of the songs that are a little bit bland, sonically similar, and they might have had something a little better. It might have moved up my list, but as it is, there's I think a few fillery songs, and I understand why people would not want to hear the hits again because they were played incessantly, and that's why I'm so surprised that I was able to enjoy them again. Probably because I haven't actually played this album in so long; it almost was fresh. So yeah, We Can't Dance, number 12.
Okay. All right. I
Oh,
mean,
one more thing. Sorry.
go
I
ahead.
did want to point out the lyric from Fading Lights. And you know that these are the days of our lives. Remember, the song ends with this lyric. Also in 1991, Queen closed out Freddie Mercury's career with "These are the days of our lives." So I
That's
found
right.
that an interesting little coincidence there.
That's right.
Just a little tidbit.
Well, I mean, just to sort of continue that point very briefly, there there were other songs, there were at least three other songs that were omitted from that were going to try to be put on the album, but because of time constraints, they couldn't put them on. I think one of those songs was On the Shoreline or something like that. One of them that Colin said it was one of his favorites from the sessions. You know, they could have switched out Tell Me Why or Never a Time with On the Shoreline, and, you know, and make it make it a stronger album. I don't know. It's not that it's a bad album, but it's not their, you know, it's not strong in terms of continuity in terms of songs, but what the hell do I know, right? Anyways,
Well, I'll give you a +1 on the Shoreline. I think that's a great track.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's a fantastic song. I think it would have made it a little stronger myself, but
Yeah, again, you could have pruned, 4 or 5 or 6 songs off We Can't Dance as it is, and then throw On the Shoreline in there. Probably would have helped with the variety and probably would have helped just make it a tighter record.
possibly, possibly. All right, down to the man of the hour.
All righty, number 12. I have
Yes.
put on my flak jacket because there will be some folks who are going to let me have it with this one. Invisible Touch, number 12. So I broke this album down into 3 different categories. First is songs that I can tolerate. And in that category is Throwing It All Away. Songs that I actually enjoy, I have 2 in that category. Land of Confusion, and oddly enough, Anything She Does. The rest of the album, I've got no time for at all. Domino, Tonight, 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 Brazilian, Invisible Touch, In Too Deep. I just find it like maybe it's a victim of sequencers, but there's just not a lot of variety going on within the songs themselves. And I just find myself getting very, very tired of it. Um, uh, it didn't help that, the first thing I ever heard from the album was Invisible Touch, was just, oh my God, those Simmons drums, Phil just being too much Phil. Um, Invisible Touch. Yeah, I mean, it just struck all the wrong notes and it kind of soured me on the whole experience. Um, they Brief side note, they came through town on this tour. They were supposed to play 3 nights. They ended up playing 6 because they sold out everything in sight. A buddy of mine gave me a ticket for free to say, just come to the show with me, will you? I'm like, all right, all right, all right. And I would say the night was pretty much a complete fail, except for the drum duet and except for the medley of In the Cage, the Wind and Weathering Pieces, and the conclusion to Supper's Ready. Finally having seen part of Supper's Ready kind of made my Genesis life complete, but the rest of Invisible Touch just really holds no place in my heart, holding on to it or not. So there we go.
Okay. All right. So, Jim, are you trying to tell us that you're not a fan of this album?
Tell us what you really think.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes, that is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Fair
However,
enough.
I would rather listen to it, even in its I don't really care for it state, than We Can't Dance, Calling All Stations, and From Genesis to Revelation. So I'll give it that. But in general,
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you heard Jim. Yeah, that's what he thinks about Invisible Touch. Okay.
Yeah, wait to see YouTube translate that.
We won't go there.
Okay.
All right. Down to Ken, as I see on my screen again. So,
Yeah. Number 12, Genesis to Revelation. Um, this is only as high up because I find it an interesting album. It's so different. Um, like I said, a lot of my choices are based on curiosities. And to me, this is definitely, a curiosity album. Um, I like to listen to it every once in a while. It's just so different, and I don't think that's necessary. Not different in a bad way, um, but it is what it is. And since I came to Genesis much later on in their history, the earlier albums are not I'm not as familiar with, and so I really don't have a dog to hunt. You know, So, yeah. Genesis to Revelation, number 12.
okay. All right. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Ladies and gentlemen, and gentlemen on the panel, my number 12 is Invisible Touch. There's going to be quite a few, you know, uh, you know, overlapping here. Uh, yeah. Their first number one album. Don't get me wrong. I bought this when it came out on cassette. I also bought it on CD. I have the vinyl. Um, there are parts of this album I like. I do like. I will stand by Domino. Uh, it's heavy in spots. It's heavy all over if you think of the subject matter. But if you
Yeah.
look at the album as a whole, ladies and gentlemen, 8 tracks, six of them, six of them were released as singles. Overkill. Yes, I know record companies, they will flog a horse, they will flog it until a dead horse until they can get as much mileage out of something as they can. This was overkill. You had all of the tracks, the 4 tracks on side one were singles. Side two, you had Anything She Does as a single, Throwing Her All Away, which I still do like, okay, as a single. It was overkill. And by the time I realized it was like, okay, what am I doing here? There was a point where In Too Deep was played on Much Music in Canada almost every hour on the hour. And it was like, okay, this is enough. This is enough. Um, I just think that they went for the throat here. They wanted the number one album, they got it. I just think that this album has been played to death, and it aside from Invisible Touch as a pop single, you know, and Domino as a prog-esque, I said prog-esque track, I think that the album really doesn't hold up as much to me anymore as it used to when I was 16. 16, like all those years ago. So, anyways, that's my number 12, Invisible Touch.
I just want to throw one last comment on there about Invisible Touch. The single came out, I don't know, like 3 weeks or a month in advance of the album. And like I said, I bought the single, not even hearing it. I'm just like, oh, a new Genesis single? All right, let's check this out. I checked it out and I thought, oh my God, this is horrible. Surely, surely the album can't be this bad. And I bought the album on day one, and sure enough, it was that bad. So,
Well, I mean, just to piggyback on what you said, I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, it was a guitar riff, the track Invisible Touch. The guitar riff was Mike Rutherford's in a 4/4.
mhm,
And what they were going for was more of a Prince, Sheila E. kind of production, right? Now,
sure.
to be fair, when you heard a Prince song, Prince production on the radio, you knew it was Prince. He had that, Lin one drum machine sound, and those percussion hits, etc. So you knew it was Prince, right? So that's what they were going for. I just think they went for overkill myself in terms of the single releases. I mean, like, oh my God, like 6 out of 8 songs. It's like, give up the ghost already. It's done. I mean, and I'm going to get blasted for this, but it was my belief that when you release an album, you release maybe 2, maybe 3 singles that best represent what the album is about musically. You know what I mean? 1, 2, 3 at the most, but 6? No, couldn't do it. Sorry. That's just me. All right, we must carry on, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, where are we at here? Number 11?
11.
Yes, sir.
Yes. All right, now it's my turn to get the hate. Hold your breath, gentlemen. I know this one is well loved amongst the crowd here, so it's Duke. Oh yeah.
11?
Yeah.
Turn in your fan card. You're done. I mean, I don't need your fan club card. Turn it in. You're done. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear it.
Go
All
ahead.
right.
Defend yourself before the court, sir.
Look
Essentially,
behind you
Duke,
as you're talking.
oh, and the dogs are barking. They're not big fans of Duke either, apparently.
Oh no, they're protesting you.
Exactly. If you notice, they waited a few seconds before they started barking. They were
They know who
protesting
feeds
you,
them.
Dad.
Oh yeah.
They're saying Dad didn't make a good choice. Go ahead.
Actually, it's just, I think this is another one of those cases. This album is, I believe, 55 minutes. And Genesis are famous for long albums. I mean, they kind of average about 50 minutes on throughout a good chunk of their career.
Yeah.
Some can handle that length and some cannot. And this one cannot for me. I think it has, again, too much sonic similarity through sections of it. It's like we go through Behind the Lines, Duchess, get a very quick break with guide vocal, then Man of Our Times. They all kind of blend together to me. They sound good, but the guys are obviously playing well, but they don't stand out to me as songs. Now, when Misunderstanding comes on, that's absolutely brilliant. It's super simple, but that's one of my favorite Genesis songs. I'd put it in the top 10 probably.
It's a fantastic pop song. Absolutely.
It's just simple, and it sounds to me so different from the stuff that had come in the previous 4 songs. It just jumps right out and gets my attention after I was kind of lulled. Then Heat Haze comes on, and it has a bit of sonic variety as well, but it's kind of forgettable to me. It doesn't stay in my head after it's done. Turn It On Again, another good choice for a single because it stands out. It's so different from so much around it. And then we get back into kind of more of the same until we get to the final of the instrumental endings, which are quite nice. But it just, again, this is an album to me, much like We Can't Dance, much like Calling All Stations, that needed to be trimmed. And I get that why people would not want that, because it's essentially a story happening here. And a bunch of these songs were actually meant to be a half-an-hour epic, but they deliberately separated them on the album so they weren't comparing themselves to themselves with Supper's Ready. But it just doesn't work for me. Just is, frankly, I could generally be fine with just the 2 popular singles from this, and I'd be okay most of the time. It just doesn't stick with me. So it's not bad. It's just not for me, apparently. Maybe
Turn
someday.
in your fan card. Turn in your fan card.
I think his hat is too tight.
Hello, Governor.
I forgive you, Bill. Moving on. Look
I think we'll
behind
have
you.
we'll have to do an entire episode on why Bill is wrong. We'll have to have an intervention episode.
Turned it wrong when I thought I was right. Just say.
Oh,
Here we go. Oh my God.
there's a song off
just a
from
shame.
there's a song off from Genesis to Revelation, which I'm going to dedicate to you, Bill, which is called "Am I Very Wrong?"
Yes, you
Yeah.
are. Ooh, wee, are you wrong? Oh my God. Moving on. Moving on. Okay. I forgive you, Bill.
Wait till the next
Um,
one.
Hey,
I forgive you. All right, Jim.
number 11, nursery crime.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
ooh.
It's going to get that way up in this video, I have a feeling. Um, there's for me three classic Genesis songs on here: Musical Box, Fountain of Salmacis, and Return of the Giant Hogweed. I think those songs are a A plus tracks.
Mhm.
However, that's 3 out of 7, and the other ones I'm just like, they just don't grab me in any way, shape, or form. In just looking at the titles, I have no connection to them musically. There's nothing that's really stayed with me about um, Seven Stones, Harold the Barrel, Harlequin, and For Absent Friends. I mean, I just they just don't connect with me for some reason, and so it's for that reason overall that Nursery Crime gets my 11 spot. I'd rather listen to that than Invisible Touch any day of the week. And yeah, I think Genesis were still they were closer to achieving their sound and their identity than they had been. But overall, for me, it's just not it's not in the top half.
Just to sort of qualify what you said about them getting closer to their sound, we're talking about a time in music history where when you were signed to a label, you were given the time to sort of hone your sound and perfect your craft, right? You were given like 2 or 3 or 4 albums to get to that point. These days, that's not even existent anymore. You know what I mean? If you don't have a hit album or a hit single off the out of the gate, you're off the label or off the platform, as it were now. Um, do you know what I mean? So I hear what you're saying about the album. I like it. It's on my list somewhere. We'll find out soon, but
Well, yes, we all have it on our list somewhere.
somewhere. But yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, Cynthia, you're a good girl and all that, but you're just not that good.
okay. Okay.
All right, Governor.
All right, Governor. All right. Ken, over to you.
Number 11, Invisible Touch. I echo what the rest of you guys said about that. I think the example of so many singles off this album uh, demonstrates the difference for music listeners of us who are older album listeners as opposed to people that just listen to singles and what's on top 40 radio. And I understand the record company doing that and the DJs playing it and but this is probably the only reason this is high up on the list as it is because I think there's a lot of the production that I find interesting. I like the record production, the sound I like of the latter albums better than the early ones. I felt that the early ones, I don't want to say it was a muddy sound, but it
You can
definitely
say
was
muddy.
distinctive. It wasn't as quite as distinctive. The change happened on Duke. The production, the sound of the production changed on Duke. But yeah, so that's probably as far as song to song, it would be lower on my list.
Mhm.
So like I said, the curiosity, I don't like the songs, but I like a lot of the production values on it. Invisible Touch, I think we put a nail in that coffin now.
Not
Oh, I believe
always.
we have.
Yeah, I think there's one holdout.
Oh, hmm.
I wonder who. Um,
Who's
Okay.
coughing?
My number 11, ladies and gentlemen, is self-titled, otherwise known as Shapes from 83. Yeah. I mean, this was a big hit when it came out, Mama, that's all, I do like Home by the Sea, Second Home by the Sea. I do like that suite. I I like the tracks, the track itself, the idea of the track, the story of the track. Again, a group of people breaking into a house and finding out that the house is haunted and they can't leave. You know what I mean? It's like, it's to me, I find that very interesting. Right, and Illegal Alien. If there was a pimple on the butt of this album, that would be it. I mean, it's okay, whatever. I do like Taking It All Too Hard, but this was where Genesis went pop. Okay, this was the start of their pop phase, and they started it with this one, and they went whole hog on it with Invisible Touch, right? But yeah, it's my number 11, self-titled, otherwise known as Shapes. Bill,
Definitely, we're getting a good variety here. I'm going to call an audible. I'm going to flip my next two.
you're not allowed to.
Ooh,
Too
he's
late.
going back.
I already put them. Yeah. I realized the one that I'm going to go for next after this one is a bit more interesting to echo Ken's philosophy here. And I'll explain that then. This time I'm going with And Then There Were Three, which is an album I really like
Oh,
quite a
Ken.
bit. This has some of my favorites. Deep in the Mother Lode has long been one of my favorite Genesis songs. I mean, when Mike hits that guitar note, that single, the part I'm talking about. If you know this
Oh,
song,
yeah.
it just gives me chills every time. That's just pure magic. Mike does so much stuff behind the scenes and so many things that are simple or unnoticed, or at least they seem simple. But in the context of the songs and the songwriting, the guy's kind of brilliant. And he's kind of an unsung hero in this band. He's the utility man. He's the John Paul Jones in a sense, I guess.
Interesting.
And of course, if I recall correctly, "Follow You, Follow Me" was a Mike song, just as "Your Own Special Way" on the previous
It
album
was.
was
It
a
was.
Mike song.
Yeah.
So people like to give Phil crap for sending them down the road of the ballads and the pop songs. Mr. Mike and the Mechanics himself was the one that really got that ball rolling. So for better and for worse.
He's the one saying, blame me, not Phil. Blame me over here.
Yes.
Okay.
Blame me while I roll in my money bin like Scrooge McDuck.
Exactly. Where's my next check coming? Yeah, okay, let's say. I mean,
Yeah, I really love Snowbound and Burning Rope. Really, Snowbound, Burning Rope, and Deep in the Mother Lode. That trifecta there, those three songs in a row. That's probably my favorite section of the album. I like the whole thing, but if I were to be fair, I would probably knock a couple songs off of this one too. Just it's a little too much. I think it could be tighter, but I still listen to it all the way through, and I still like it. So, and I think it's a pretty solid first effort without Mr. Hackett in the band. They do an admirable job of filling in for what's missing there. That's my number. Is that 11?
number 10.
10.
That's
number 10.
yeah, it is number 10. Okay.
Maybe that hat is on a little too tight. Okay. All right. All right. Interesting. Interesting. Just a little side note. You were saying that a lot of the Genesis albums range in the 50-minute plus mark, like even as far back as Selling England by the Pound. And what people don't seem to know or understand, or even the band, I guess, didn't understand, is the more music you put on per side of a vinyl album, the quality diminishes greatly, right? Because you're only supposed to have like 17 to 20 minutes per side on an album, and 20 is pushing it. So when you have more than that, more than 20, your sound quality diminishes greatly, and it sounds very flat. To me, it sounds very tinny, like like you're listening to it like with tin cans, for headphones kind of thing. Because
Mhm.
it's I don't know, but that's the way
To
they
rebut
wanted it.
that,
What was that?
so to rebut that, I think that's actually an excellent point in general. Like, Todd Rundgren albums, I got some of those back here behind me that
Yeah,
are like
yeah,
was thinking
yeah. I
about
was gonna
that.
say,
But
Mr. Pushing the Limits himself. Yeah,
yeah, those albums do fall into that category. But I think overall, the Genesis albums, based on my record collection, I think they managed to somehow get around that. I think they still sound good, and I don't understand how they did it.
yeah. I mean, if you just a little side note again, if you listen to say Selling England by the Pound and like Ty Rundgren's Utopia back to back, there was a definite sound quality loss. Because I mean, the icon, 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was like 33, 35 minutes on a side for
Like, come
Icon. Yeah.
on. I mean, that you know what I mean? Like, but he tried to push what he could do, right? On vinyl. And I guess Genesis obviously we're doing the same thing, right? Um,
Yeah,
but
but even in doing that, like you were saying, selling England by the pound, when you get to towards the end of side two and you're getting the instrumental portion of Cinema Show, I mean, when those bass pedals hit, you feel them, you hear them. They're not muddy. I think that of the
yeah,
original suite of albums, I think that Selling England is probably the one that's best produced and kind of holds up the best sonically.
yeah,
So they were able, yeah, I don't know how they were able to work around it, but yeah, I kind of hear what you're saying, Bill. They certainly did.
yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, so much for not getting into tangents. Yeah, on these episodes, but
I would like to point out for our audience who started that tangent.
I started it. There we go. No, I'm not saying that you started it. I did.
All
But
right,
just
okay.
saying we can go an episode without having a tangent, which is great, right? So
This show is about
Conversation.
Genesis, not the Tangent. That's another band altogether.
there you go. There you go. All right, down to the man of the hour. Jim.
Okay. My number 10 is Genesis Shapes, 1983. Um, I liked this album when it first came out, but boy, did I get tired of a lot of it really, really quickly. Um, Um, the ones that still hold up for me are Mama, the two Home by the Sea songs, um, Taking It All Too Hard, and It's Gonna Get Better. The rest of it I can just kind of do without. Um, um, what's curious to me is that this is the first album, as I understand it, where they said, "All right, we're going to make this truly a collective." We're no more solo songs. It's going to be what all three of us come up with together. And I think that was just a product of them finally having their own studio where they can go in and mess around and jam and have songs develop from that. Um, and I think what's kind of telling about that is that, unless I'm mistaken, there's no like unique B-sides from these sessions. There's no outtakes. There's no things that were left on the cutting room floor. To me, the albums in hindsight seems almost like it was a bit of a struggle to achieve. I think they achieved some really good things with it, the two Home by the Seas, it's going to get better and whatnot, but they seem to be trying to adapt and find their way in this new um, limit that they've put upon themselves to just say, all right, we want this, we want Genesis to be Genesis, not an album that has a song from Phil and a song from Tony and a song from Mike.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's just not. I would say for me about 50% of this album works. In fact, with the math that I did, I'm going to go and say 56% of this album worked for me. But there's just so many more albums in the catalog that just work much more strongly and consistently. Um, yeah, Shapes, it's kind of in the middle. Meh.
I got you. I got you. Okay. Ken.
Number 10, We Can't Dance. Um, and the only
Which is
reason
true. We
it's
can't.
high as it is I
Oh,
find
I got rhythm. I don't know about you.
I find that a few of the songs are interesting as far as um, song forms and stuff like that, but yeah, it's definitely not one of my go-tos. So as a musician, it's just because of those curiosity songs. Yeah. Number 10, We Can't Dance.
Very clear and concise. Perfect. No, that's
Well,
fair.
most of it's already been said,
Well,
so yeah.
that's fair. That's fair. No, it wasn't a slight, Ken.
Yeah.
Right, my number 10, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna get shot for this one. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Um,
Talk
sit
about
back in
revoking
your
the fan
seat.
card. Come
Sit
on.
back in your seat. Guys,
Hmm.
and everyone watching, I like this album. I'm gaining more of appreciation for this album. Originally, this was going to be in the lower end of this list, like around 15, 14, but I've listened to it more recently and I've gained a new appreciation for it. I still can't follow the storyline. I don't think you can without reading the album cover, without reading the story on the inside of the double album cover, like the gatefold. I like the title track. I've always liked the title track. I like Flying the Windshield is okay. Broadway Melody in 1974 is fine. In the Cage, Carpet Crawlers, fantastic tracks. Okay. I just think that, I mean, the story is of a young Puerto Rican gentleman by the name of Rail and his adventures in New York City of self-discovery, and that's a quote from Wikipedia. But it's just it's 94 minutes long and 17 seconds. Talk about trimming down. Um, I think it was an ambitious idea to do this. I think it was very ambitious for them to tour with this album in America without it even being released, playing 100 shows of this within only four of them with the projections working properly. Um, it's a good album. Um, Sonically, it's stronger. The drums aren't as muddy in terms of the sound. They could have been a little heavier in some spots, like on the title track, etc. But it's just, and other songs like the Lamia notwithstanding, I just think, just needs to be a little more tighter in terms of the storyline and what they were trying to do. I mean, but it is number 10, so it could have been number 15, but it's not, right? Um,
Was it at one point? Did you have it that far down?
yeah, yeah, but listening to it, I thought, what, there is some musical validity here. There is some experimentation here. Um, there is some exploration musically here, and I think it works. I think it works. But I gotta tell you, I don't know about you guys, but when I hear an artist, another mini rant warning, there we go. When I hear an artist talk about an album that they worked on years later saying, I really didn't like that album. I really didn't like what we did. I didn't like, I should have spoke up more. I should have made my point known more at the time. But now when I look back at this album, it's like, oh, it's not my favorite. That affects me as a fan of an album. Like Tony Banks is hugely critical of this album. He does not like the storyline at all. He does not like some of the musical pieces at all. Um, he doesn't even like the album cover art. None of them do, with maybe the exception of Peter Gabriel. So when you hear a band member say, you know what, I cringe when I hear it. You know what? It does affect me as a fan. So um, it's not that I'm easily led, but I mean, I'm just saying that it could have been better. It could have been tighter. I mean, I know you're gonna have a different opinion about it, but That is my number 10. So, you know what? For all you watching, all the haters, let's go. Come at me. All right, I'm ready.
All right.
All right,
Interesting choice.
here we go. Here we go.
My number 9 was my number 10 until I pulled that audible there. And on my initial list, it was my number 11. So it's moved up, and it's The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
Oh, Lamb.
So I'm right there with you, Armando. I can do tales from topographic oceans from front to back and immerse myself in the whole massive thing. I can do the same with The Wall. I mean, these classic big double, uh, potentially highly confusing progressive rock albums. Those I have no problem with. This one has always eluded me. But like Ken was talking about, the sonic interesting things about it, the curiosities, the as I listened to this album again and again in preparation for this, I found all kinds of cool stuff that I never noticed before, just musically. I just kind of let the story stay in the background and I just listened to what the band was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think since they had previously, shared the lyrics prior to this album, and of course, Peter famously demanded to be the lyricist here, other than I believe The Light Lies Down on Broadway, Mike and Tony were allowed to contribute some words. Uh, so really that freed them up. They didn't have to worry about lyrics. They were able to focus on being the band. And that made them come up with some very unusual things that they never did before and they haven't done since. And so I feel like I've given this album short shrift over the years, and I'm going to be spending more time with it. And I feel like it has more room to move up the list. I expect it to do so. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So mine, this is number 9 with an asterisk and a bullet.
And a bullet. Okay.
I was wrong.
Just a little side note to add to your point about the lyrics. It was a major bone of contention that Gabriel wanted to write all the lyrics for the songs. A major bone of contention, and it still is if you speak to Banks or Collins about it, because, or at least it was in 2007 when the remasters came out, um, because they always wanted to do things as a band. And the fact that, according to Collins, they were in the living room writing the music, and Gabriel was in another room, writing all the lyrics and just sequestered himself from the band. And that added tension to what was going on, right? Uh, you know, a little side note, I can say, okay, to me, this sounds like the brainchild to, of Peter Gabriel. It really doesn't sound like the brainchild of the band. It almost sounds like to me, it was his idea and he sort of brought, dragged the band along with him in order to get this done, right? I may be wrong, and people watching out there, correct me in the comments below. You have before, and are you going to do it again? So that's how I take it. But I mean, yeah, I
There's an excellent YouTube essay out there about the creation of the Lamb album, and it definitely harkens back to like one of their 1973 tours. I think their first time in New York, and how Gabriel was affected by a lot of the things that he saw. And I think a lot of the germination for the story of the Lamb kind of started there, at least if this video essay is accurate. Um, so yeah, it would make sense that it's kind of directionally a more Peter Gabriel based album. But the thing that's interesting, that what you just said, Armando, that I hadn't considered before, was that if four of the guys were in the living room writing the music and Gabriel was in the other room working on the lyrics, does that mean that musically Peter didn't contribute very much to this?
I'm not sure. I think that, I know that he solely took, I've, heard from heard that Tony Banks said that he took sole responsibility of writing the lyrics against the wishes of the rest of the band.
Mhm.
Right. So, because I would imagine their view was you want us to agree with what you're writing and singing about, but you're not going to let us see what you're doing. Like, that's not right. Like, it was a very sort of us against them kind of situation in terms of, Gabriel against the rest of the band. And there was a lot of other dramas going on. I mean, at one point during the making of the album, he quit the band because he was approached by William Friedkin to work on an idea because of The Exorcist, right? He was popular with The Exorcist. He had read the story that Gabriel had written on the back of the live album, and he liked that idea, so he wanted to approach Gabriel, and Gabriel said, "Okay, I'll try it out." And the band said, "No, you either do this or you go with him, and you do the film. You can't do both." So he left. So I mean, at that point, I think there was that major split between them. But I mean, I like the album. I'm still trying to wrap my feeble little mind around what it's about, in terms of an idea. So that's
But that could be a bit of a fool's errand. I mean, people have been doing that for 50 years, and I think there's just so much of what, whatever allegories Gabriel was thinking of, only he's going to know exactly what he meant, even if he knows, he may have just come up with something clever
yeah,
because it sounded clever.
yeah. I think it just comes down to you take out of it what you can, the idea of what you can, and then you move on, right? So
My job doesn't allow me to do the kind of drugs required to try to parse out the meaning of the album. So.
moving on down to June.
Down to me? Really?
Yes, I
Did Bill
believe
do his number 9?
Yes, Lamb.
That was the Lamb? Okay, all
so.
right. I'm just blinded by Lamb at this point.
Oh
Number
my
9,
God.
Trespass, 1970? Yeah,
Yes.
1970. What do we got here? Looking for Someone, Visions of Angel, Stagnation, The Knife. Great, great stuff. Just not as great of, again, they were still trying to find themselves. They took it was definitely a step forward from Genesis to Revelation. Nursery Crime was another step forward. But yeah, I mean, it's good. It's just not, numbers 8 through 1 good. And I'll just make a note here that for me, as I sort of looked at my list and how I arranged it, I got this definite bell curve going on where, it's like the first 3 albums are, wavering down here. Then you got the middle section, spoiler alert, and then like, the last 4 are, my tailing down there. So it's an interesting, arc for me at least. I don't know if y'all have the same similar graphic in your heads for how your list came out, but that's what mine is. So this video is all about the bottom parts of the great big bell curve that Bricker has for his Genesis discography. Harumph.
Okay. All right. Ken.
Number 9, Genesis, or the Shape album. Armando, I think you pretty much nailed this album with your comments. Most of the songs that I like off of this album were not the singles, which is not unusual for me. Like you said, Home by the Sea and Second Home. I think that's just a wonderful pairing. Um, so so yeah, it's not a whole lot. It's just not in my top 5
All right. Fair enough.
shapes. It's been
Fair
said.
enough. Yeah. All right, guys, ladies and gentlemen, watching to give you my number 9 and to end off part 1 of Frank and the Albums version 2.0. We are going to Nursery Crime 1971. 7 cuts, strong album. The musical box has always been a staple in terms of drama, and theater, in terms of a construction of a song, it's pretty much the like the centerpiece of the album, even though it's the first track. 10 minutes, 32 seconds. Strong track. And I mean, when Gabriel performed this live, he put on the old man's mask and he'd be in character, and performing it. It's very visual. You know what I mean? Collins would do this as part of an old medley, as they called it on the dance tour. They would do the last section, you stand there with your fixed expression, just casting down on all I've had to say, kind of thing. That's the part where they would come in with this. And he would do it strong. I mean, the floodlights coming up on his face and all that kind of stuff. It was strong. It was really powerful. But Gabriel owns this song in terms of the way he did it on stage. The album is good. I mean, The Return of the Giant Hogweed is a good track. For Absent Friends, I believe that's Collins on lead vocals. He does come in very soft with his vocal delivery, not very strong, but that's how I guess they wanted it. Harold the Barrel is a very British track in terms of the comedic element of it. But this is where this is the album that people know Genesis for, the classic lineup. The first album to feature Hackett and Collins, and it is a very strong album. And it may go further up on my list as I listen to the album more, in time. But for now, that is my number 9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the end of part 1 of our ranking the albums, Genesis version 2.0. We are going to take a mini break, and we will be back with part 2, ranking numbers 8 to 1. All right. So again, for all of you watching, please click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content I've got coming up. And we'll see you soon with part 2. Bye for now. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Again, hoping that you guys are looking after yourselves and one another. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with part 2 of our Genesis Ranking the Albums version 2.0. In part 1, we ranked albums 15 to 9, and in part 2, we are going to be closing it out with ranking albums 8 to 1. Again, I have with me Bill Schuster, Ken Cheshire, and the man of the hour, Jim Bricker. He's moved on our screens, ladies and gentlemen, or at least on my screen. So, as I see on my screen, we are going to continue with Bill and go down to Ken and then over to Jim. So, Bill, you're number 8.
All right. I realized I forgot in the first part of this show to mention our other guest, Little Phil. So he doesn't get any camera time here because he's down too low, but he wanted to come out and say hi. So.
What tour was that from?
I don't even remember. This is one of those. I didn't even go see the tour. It was at a local music store when they were closing, and I got a couple of Phil Collins shirts for like less than $5 each. Was, hey, cool.
Can you show me the shirt again?
Yeah.
Both sides.
Is it?
All right, then.
Word for it.
Normally, when someone offers to show me Little Phil, I say no. But
hey.
Ladies and gentlemen, catch Ken tonight at 10 o'clock at the Blue Room. I mean,
2-drink minimum.
I mean, Rail was carrying.
Yes,
Rail carried Little Phil around his neck in the
world. I mean, so I mean, there you go. Okay. Tangents and jokes aside.
All right. Well, yeah, I was supposed to pick an album.
Yeah.
Just pick one, anyone. Yeah.
Derailed myself.
Yeah.
All right.
Number 8.
Number 8 is
sweet Jesus.
Many people's very favorite. And I get that, but it's not mine. It's Selling England by the Pound.
Okay.
What was said previously about Foxtrot having 3 great songs? That's my argument for Selling England. It's Probably the most obvious, Dancing with the Moonlit Night, Firth the Fifth, and especially the Cinema Show. Those three songs absolutely tower over everything else on this album for me. Not that the rest of the album is bad, but there's just such a great divide, I think, for me in quality there. It's almost like two separate albums in a way. And so I can't really rate it any higher when I'd really be just rating it for those three songs in particular. If it was a three-song album, it might be up a little higher on my list because those are absolute genius among their best work. Yeah, Epping Forest gets a lot of hate. I don't hate it, but it's another one of those songs I don't necessarily require it on the album either. I think I'd be okay without it. So yeah, it's good stuff, especially those three songs, but I like all the rest of these better as albums.
Mm-hmm.
I just sold England by the pound at number 8.
There you go. I think the three comment was the one that I made about nursery crime.
Yes, that's. Did I say Foxtrot or?
You did. That's,
Okay, yeah, I meant Nursery Crime. You're
it's
correct.
been a long morning already, so you're
Yes, it
forgiven.
has.
Yeah, especially for you.
It's going to get longer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Ken.
Oh,
Number
I
8,
thought we
Ken.
were going with Jim. Okay. My number 8 is Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I pretty much echo, I really want to like this album more than I do. But Bill made a very good point. He just kind of tuned out what the storyline was and focused on the music, and that's what I do too. After the first few times trying to figure it out, I just, what the heck? I don't. Life isn't that, isn't short enough. Um, because I just don't think concept albums need to be so complex that you can't follow it, which is another reason why probably my favorite is Quadrophenia. You can read the liner notes and get the story, but you don't have to. But if you read the liner notes, you just get more. But yeah, I think there's some really good stuff on Lamb Lies Down, but I have to focus on the music. And honestly, and this is what I'll catch flack for, I'm just not a big Peter Gabriel fan. So, you know, and his temperament and whatever with all the stories, the making of this album, and it's just this. I kind of want to say, "Who do you think you are?" And but there's some wonderful moments in this album. So who knows? Maybe as I get older, it may grasp me a little bit stronger than it does right now. But for me, it's only number 8.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Just to let you know, the reason why I went to you, Ken, was because I was looking at it as you appear on my screen. So you're right below Bill. So
Got it.
there you go. Now over to the man of the hour,
Jimmy.
Okay, let's do
Okay.
this. Number 8, which I think this choice will severely affect Ken and my relationship. And then there were 3. Um, I
Oh
don't know
God.
what it is about the. I know, make the face, make the sour lemon face. I get it. Um, this album to me is it has some really, really, really strong points, and they're kind of well positioned. The Down and Out and Undertow are fantastic tracks. Even though it took me forever to figure out where the one is in Down and Out, I just absolutely love that track. Um, the end of side 1, the beginning of side 2, Burning Rope and Deep in the Motherlode. Whoa, freaking banger tracks right there. And then the end of the album, Lady Lies, Follow You, Follow Me. Great stuff. Absolutely great. You were saying earlier, Bill, what a, what a great, pop song "Follow You, Follow Me" is, and that's Mike Rutherford and his big money bin of cash rolling around. Um, but to me, the rest of the album just kind of meh. It's just this weird combination of really strong highs and really just forgettable portions of it. And maybe that's because they went into this immediately after mixing Seconds Out. Maybe they were still trying to kind of find their way after Steve. Maybe they should have taken a bit of a break to sort of recharge their batteries to come up with like a full, strong album's worth of material. And there's just something of, I think this is the album that suffers most from too much music per sides of the album. I remember feeling that way when I heard the original vinyl. It's just like, wow, there's something that's kind of thin about these songs. We were talking earlier about Duke being kind of much stronger. I mean, it still sounds like David Henshaw, but yet there's a bit more oomph to it. And I don't know if that's in just how they mix the drums or the bass or whatnot. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. And then there were three, my number 8. I was going on too long.
Never.
Jim, I think your taste has been warped because you listen to too much Taylor Swift.
That's quite impossible.
So it's
Shots fired. Band-Aids don't fix bullet holes. Be careful.
That's right. That's right. I thought you were going to say too much John Zorn. That could be true. That could be
Following
true.
is an announcement.
From Genetic Control. What are you going to say here?
This is a Taylor Swift free zone, ladies and gentlemen. I am going on record as saying right now there will never, and I mean never, ever be videos dedicated to Taylor Swift.
In any way, shape, or form?
No. And I
Okay, well, I guess I'm not on the Guilty Pleasures episode.
So
I'll
be
be
it.
off in the corner. Yeah, so be it.
So be
Fine.
it.
You have your little fun without me.
Oh,
What's your number 8, Armando?
my number 8, ladies and gentlemen, as we carry on after the tangent, is Trespass. Released in October of 1970, 6 tracks in total. This is considered to be by the band, specifically Tony Banks, as the first official Genesis album. I have this on CD. I have this on ABC Records on vinyl. To me, the knife makes this album. Looking for Someone is fine, very pastoral in its nature and its arrangement. White Mountain is okay. Stagnation is the one track that people keep talking about that was done early in concert, that people loved. But for me, the knife clocking in at 8 minutes and 56 seconds makes this album. From the galloping drum pattern to the lyrical content to the delivery of the vocals from Gabriel. I'm not saying that sonically it's their best album. Produced by John Anthony, who would go on to work with Queen on their first album and then have a falling out with the band, moving on. But he continued to work with Genesis. I'm just getting back into this album when we were going to do this ranking. I just think that the knife, as an album closer, makes it what it is. It's dramatic. It's grand. It works on so many levels. But it is still my number 8. Trespass.
All right.
Moving on.
We're taking so long recording this that my stomach's rumbling now. I'm apparently getting hungry. Lucky for me, supper's ready. It's Foxtrot.
Good segue.
Yeah. Foxtrot. Obviously, I was mortified when I heard all the lack of love for Nursery Crime in our previous episode. And well, this is essentially Nursery Crime's sibling, even down to the Paul Whitehead artwork, which echoes Nursery Crime. As you can see here
Yep.
under the barcode, there's the croquet field. Cynthia out there murdering people, I'm sure.
Okay.
All right. Foxtrot is a great album, but Foxtrot has gaucho syndrome. For we might have some Steely Dan fans amongst the panel here, pretty much everybody. Foxtrot is to Nursery Crime for me what gaucho is to Asia. It's a too refined, too perfect version of the previous album, and it loses some of that initial magic that to me made the previous album work on a different level. And I'll explain that when that album comes up for me, of course. But and that's not to hate on this album because it's absolutely brilliant. I don't think there's a bad song on it. Watcher of the Skies, the very opening, we all know that mellotron, that swelling, that's pure classic. That is Prague. I mean,
Dripping. Yes.
yeah, and obviously, Armando's done an entire episode on Supper's Ready. I'm not even going to begin to try to compete with his dissertation on that. It's a great song, and I will say that I know a lot of people love the version with Phil on Seconds Out. No, that's Peter's song all the way. I have to go with the original for Supper's Ready. Yeah, good stuff. Get them out by Friday. I like quite a bit too. Just it's very lyrically dense, but Peter's actually, I believe that's a Peter lyric, but I'm not positive. It's been a bit since I looked into who wrote the lyrics for the songs on Foxtrot. But it actually has a statement to make. It's not the more whimsical, fantastical stuff that they had been doing on Nursery Crime. It's more, it's a bit sci-fi, but also very real world. You dig into the lyrics on Get Them Out by Friday, the commodification of people, essentially. So yeah, it's a brilliant album. I love the cover, but it's a pale shadow to Nursery Crime for me. So it's the little sibling that's trying hard, but trying too hard. And I know I'm in the minority, not just on this panel, but amongst Genesis fans with that opinion. So, but no shade on it. It's a wonderful album. Nothing to hate on it, certainly.
Okay. Any comments?
No.
Everybody else still has it yet to come, so I'm sure there will be plenty of comments.
Okay. All right. Ken?
Okay. Well, yeah. Foxtrot, number 7.
All right then.
Yeah. And yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that it is the sibling of Nursery Crime, and you know that came in my 13. I really don't know why they're so far apart, on my list, when it seems like they should be closer together. But like I said, it's just the way it strikes me. But yeah, for the same songs and the same reason, Bill, that you mentioned, it's just a great album. Number 7. It's been said.
Okay. All right. Jim?
I think the thing for me, just while we're on the topic, I will go there. I think what makes Foxtrot a little bit stronger than Nursery Crime to me is that this we'll leave Horizons aside. We'll leave that aside because it's not really a proper song. I think from a song standpoint, the 5 that they have on Foxtrot, are just much stronger independently. If I'm looking at like the seven songs, I think it is on Nursery Crime. I talked about this before. You've got Fountain, you've got Musical Box, you've got Hogweed. They're all really great, and the rest of them just seem like they're, they just seem rather incomplete to me. And it's not because I only like longer songs, and if it's not over 4 minutes, I don't care about it. I like the shorter little poppy ones too. We talked about Misunderstanding, Turn It On Again, Follow You, Follow Me, stuff like that. But there's just something that just feels like they're still finding their way to me on Nursery Crime. But on Foxtrot, it's like, okay, boom, we've landed. So, I kind of see it as like the big brother of nursery crime, as opposed to like what Gaucho is to Asia or The Long Run is to Hotel California. But that's just me. That's just my opinion.
I think you're probably in the majority with that amongst Genesis fans and critics.
All right.
All right then.
Your number 7. Did you give me number 7?
No, I just had to put on my flak jacket. My number 7 is in the middle of the top row of what is above Bill there, and that is Wind and Wuthering. Now, what to say about this?
Start from the beginning.
I think I'm going to be in the minority. I really don't like Your Own Special Way. I really, really don't like it. I think for me, there's a good gem of a nice pop song in there, but it just goes on and on and on. It's just like too much of the same thing. It's like many too many, within this own song. It just to me, it just seems redundant. The there's not enough growth or dynamics going on within the song to make the sameness more palatable. I think the whole keyboard solo in the middle, you could just kind of excise it somehow and make it go away. It still wouldn't make the song much better, but at least there's not this like, oh, I gotta sit through this to get to the end. And I get that I'm a minority opinion, but for me, Your Own Special Way just brings the album down. All in a Mouse's Night, similar kind of thing. I just don't connect with, Tony's little Tom and Jerry cartoon with a big, you know, mechanical robot mouse at the end of it. Um, However, having said all that, I think that Blood on the Rooftops, Unquiet Slumber, In That Quiet Earth, and Afterglow may be the best closing suite on an album ever. That section of music is just so strong, so creative, so compelling. Um, and Afterglow is, just like I think we talked about it on the songs episode. It's just this perfect little since cherry of sincerity, on top of everything. I mean, there's nothing about Tony's lyrics that just seem sort of hackneyed or insincere. It's just a lovely expression of how much he loves what the woman he has in his life has given to him and how it helps him carry on through things. Yeah, the only other comment, no, I'll keep going. What Gorilla, I just think is really creative and fun. I wish that's something that they would have trotted out live a lot more and just really kind of had some fun with. Um, One for the Vine, I think, the version that's on Three Sides Live eclipses it just in terms of, ferocity and really kind of takes some of the twee elements out of it and just really, makes it happen. Um, that's all. That is my defense of my putting Wind and Wuthering at number 7, and that's why I had to put on the flak jacket because I just had a feeling.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you
Sir.
feel that Your Own Special Way would be a good entry level song for people that don't know Genesis?
I
would.
Non-prog fans, maybe?
No, I,
Okay.
I think it just goes on too long. I just don't think it's a good song, period.
Okay. All right.
You and Tony Banks are in agreement on that about it being too long.
I don't often agree with Tony, but on this one,
Yeah.
I do.
Well, um, yeah. Well,
But
your
but to
opinion.
the point that Ken raised, if I had to pick like an entry level Genesis song for people, I would actually pick 3. I would pick Behind the Lines, Duchess, and Guide Vocal.
I would
You
have
hear
never
that,
listened to
Bill?
the band again. I would have been lost as a Genesis fan.
I understand.
Okay. All right. Okay. No, it's fine. You know what? Everyone's assessment is fair. It's your opinion,
Yeah,
right?
it's all subjective.
That's exactly it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, moving on. My number 7, selling England by the pound.
You're
Uh,
wrong.
you're out. Anyways, you know,
Gonna be bad blood.
excuse me.
This is the episode you pay your money for, people. This is why you're here.
That's
Right.
exactly it. I think it's a strong album, even from the cover by Betty Swanick. The album art cover is fantastic. Um, Dancing with the Moonlit Night is a strong introduction to the album. Pig Gabriel's vocals on the a cappella intro are very present. They're there, like he's very sort of proud of what he's singing. You know, he's representing England kind of thing. It's a very English track, right? Just the whole track itself is great. The single I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe, um, very eclectic track. For me, I remember hearing that single on Q107 in Toronto for the very first time, thinking, this is not Genesis. It's not Phil Collins. It was Genesis. Okay. I was just getting used to the fact at the time that there was a lead singer before Phil Collins. Um, for me, Birth the Fifth is going to be the centerpiece of the album. That is Steve Hackett's song. I mean, whoever wrote it, um, that guitar solo is Steve Hackett. I'm sorry. That is one of his, if not his best guitar solo ever. It's identifiable with him, even though Daryl Sturmer does a fantastic job live, or did a fantastic job live. It's Hackett all the way. I'm sorry. It's such a strong performance. The Battle of Epping Forest on side 2. This is quite a lengthy album. You've got like tracks that are 8 minutes long, 9 minutes long. Uh, 2 tracks are over 11 minutes long. Okay, talk about pushing the boundaries of what could be put on vinyl. Um, the Cinema Show is another good track. After the Ordeal, that's in between the Battle of Epping Forest and the Cinema Show. And it ends off with the Isle of Plenty, for like 1 minute 33 seconds. It's adventurous, it's daring, it's pushing the boundaries again on storytelling, and then use of Mellotron. Again, there's a lot of Mellotron on this album, dripping with Mellotron. Yes, thank you, thank you. Um, it might go higher on my list, but right now it's at number 7. Selling England by the pound. Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
Well, I'm gonna go my number 6. I'm gonna do a full 180 from that. I'm finally putting it in. It's Invisible Touch. Some would say it's in
Okay.
too deep on this countdown, but I don't think so. This is another one that went up a notch from my original. I originally had it at 7. I put it at 6. It's an album that I never used to appreciate when it was new. I just didn't really care about it. I heard the songs on the radio, but I never bought it back then. I didn't feel like I needed it. So it's taken me a long time to come around to Invisible Touch. Anything she does, which was mentioned as a favorite earlier, is actually my least favorite on the album. It's yeah, it's an interesting song. It's one of his particular Tony genre of imaginary woman songs. Tony has this trend in some of his lyrics where he
Yes,
puts this fantasy woman in some situation and she's somehow unreachable, or yeah, it's one of his favorite themes, it seems like. That so that at least is interesting to me, just comparing that to some of Tony's previous work. He is my favorite lyricist in the band, even over Peter. Tony's done a lot of really cool lyrics. The weakest point for me on this has always been the title track. It's that whole dee, 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 dee. Yeah, it's incessantly catchy, annoyingly so, but it's an earworm. it still pains me a bit that this is their only number one song here in the States. Seems a little ridiculous, but I've come to enjoy the song. But those songs apart, I think the rest of the album is absolutely brilliant. Uh, I've really come around on it. I do like the sound quite a bit. I think Hugh Padgham does a great job here on the production.
Yeah.
Domino was a sleeper track for me. I never really dug deep into the lyrics, and once I finally hit it, this isn't some love song. This is a song about war and the selling of war, and it's pretty horrific when you get into the story. You dig into the lyrics, and you see the way, you hear the way that the music supports this story. It gets very dramatic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And wow. Yeah. Last time I listened to it, yesterday or the day before, it brought tears to my eyes. It was very emotional. I was into the story and the vibe. So I never thought a song from Invisible Touch would be able to bring tears to my eyes. So that's something. Also, Throwing It All Away. I used to take that for granted, but wow, that's a brilliant pop song. That's a master class at pop songwriting. And that's one thing I really found about this album on doing a deeper dive into it, is that these guys never lost who they were. They never lost being great musicians or being creative. They just channeled it differently. They tried new things with it. But if you listen to what they're doing in some of these songs, it's every bit as brilliant as some of the stuff they've done before. It just is very much of its time.
Sure.
And I know a lot of times people hear that 80s sound and automatically just mentally dismiss it as just being more of the same from that era, nothing creative. But this is another one emotionally too, that whole line where Phil sings, the only sound you hear is
the sound of your voice calling after me.
Calling after me. That's just a crushing line in the context of this song. And another lovely touch in it is as they get into the ooh, and they get to the it's kind of cheesy that but it works. That's another one of those brilliant touches that they just put in there, because that's what they do. These guys are just amazing creative songwriters, even when they're doing it in a popular music context. They put things in that other people would not do. In Too Deep, it's a notch below in Throwing It All Away as far as the big love ballads off this, but I still like it quite a bit. I still can't sing the chorus properly because I constantly rearrange the lines in the chorus in my head and I never get it right, but it's still catchy anyway. Tonight, it has to be the long version. That single edit is an abomination. All kinds of cool, interesting stuff is going on in the midsection of this song that is not there on that single. One of the things I always found kind of ironic about this, though, is that Tonight is essentially a song about drug addiction. And it was used for a Michelob commercial.
Yes.
Yeah,
Indeed it was.
Talk about tone deaf. Wow.
Yeah. Talk about sellout.
Yes. And I want to echo what Armando said about Prince earlier, because the Brazilian makes me think of Darling Nikki like nothing else. It sounds like they pulled that right off the Purple Rain album. And I was
I was steering that towards Invisible Touch, the track.
We'll re-listen to the Brazilian and listen to Darling Nikki again and see if you notice some sonic similarities there. Obviously, Darling Nikki's a bit more.
I knew a girl named Nikki, I guess you could say. Yeah, I know.
Yes. And yeah, Land of Confusion. Land of Confusion it's a great single. I could have done without the Disturbed cover, but well, they did it no harm. They just didn't add anything to it. The original was enough all on its own. So yeah, really, this one has surprised me in how high it ranks in my catalog. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, this would have probably been in the bottom 3 or 4. So it's risen a great deal. And I'm glad, because it's nice. It's almost like having a new Genesis album, even though, as Armando said, these songs were played to death. So yeah, I'm the only Invisible Touch album lover in the group today, but I will stand by that.
2 quick points. When
Okay.
you were talking about throwing it all away, I mean the opening lyric, need I say I love you, need I say I care? Need I say that emotions are something we don't share? It's like, oh, okay, we're going there. That is pretty, that is like, that goes right for the heart. You know what I mean? Like right there, it's like, okay, this is where we're going. All right. It's, yeah. And that video for the song was filmed in Toronto at the C&E Stadium on September 22nd, 1986, when they played Toronto. First of like 3 dates that they played in Toronto that year. So for the tour. So yeah, that brings back memories. But well, good choice. Interesting. Interesting. All right. Ken.
Number 6, selling England by the pound. Armando, I think you summed it up quite nice. You know, that opening trilogy, Dancing with the Moonlit Night, I Know What I Like, Firth of Fifth. Yeah, it's really great. Side B, you know, it's just so good. Um, yeah, you pretty much said 99% of what I think about it. So there it is. You said it. Ditto. Selling England by the pound. Number 6.
Ladies and gentlemen, the quickest album ranking ever on the Music Den. Over to
Big draw.
Jim. Over to Jim.
Hello, or hello, as Phil might say.
Hello, hello.
My number 6, the top of the Bill Schuster pyramid over there, but I had a different album cover to go with that, and that is Abacab. I think I'm the first one to mention Abacab on the show here on this list. Um, I Abacab was my gateway into Genesis. It was the first album I bought. I was of theirs. I was 16 at the time. My gateway into Genesis was Face Value, and then of course, hearing Misunderstanding and Follow You, Follow Me on the radio. So Abacab has a special place in my heart, and there's a lot to really, really like about this album, despite what some prominent people on Twitter say. Um, I don't think it's perfect. I think there's a couple of naff tracks on here along the way, but I think it's a very, very strong album, and it balances well, I don't even know if it's a balance. I'm going to say that there's like 55% pop and 45% prog on this album. So it's definitely shifting towards the more poppy era of the band. But there's songs like Dodo Lurker and even the title track and Me and Sarah Jane. They just they work very, very well, very, very powerfully. No Reply at All, fantastic, bass line, fantastic horn charts there. Really, really like it. But there are 5 Genesis albums that I think are better. But now we're getting into a matter of degrees almost,
Yeah.
of just my minute little differentiators between the albums. But yeah, for
Splitting
me,
hairs. Yeah.
we are splitting hairs. I have the most hairs to split, so I'm going to go with that and say Abacab is my nurse. Okay, well, thank you. Now I don't feel so alone. But I think I still have the most hairs to split.
You do. Yours is thicker than mine.
Okay. Number 6.
All right. All right. No one can rock a hat like Bill, though. Moving on.
This is true.
That's Bird.
I wouldn't even
Phil.
try.
There we go. My
Little
head's
Phil usually wears a hat.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my number 6. And then there were 3. This album, when it came out, got a lot of flack from people, or sorry, mixed reviews from critics, and they really couldn't make heads or tails of it. I think it's a very dense album in terms of the songs on it. I mean, for me, okay, Follow You, Follow Me, the first major hit. This is where they first saw women coming to the shows. Okay. But ladies, if you thought that the rest of the album was the same, you're wrong. And it should also be said that this is the last album that Tony Banks used Mellotron on. Other songs of note are Deep in the Motherlode, Many Too Many, the ballad, Down and Out. I mean, all these songs are great. Undertow, Snowbound. Is it a strong album? There are 5 on my list that outrank this, but I think for them being down to a trio, and you know what? It's got to be said too. When they said that, they did say in many interviews that when Hackett left, that it wasn't really a big deal for them. You know what? A little mini rant. For a band that says that a member was just as integral as this one member was just as integral as the rest of them. What the hell are you saying? Why are you saying, sorry, that when he left it wasn't such a big deal? You're going back and forth on your opinion of him as a guitarist. There was also Mike Rutherford that said that he felt that Hackett was better at writing bits, not full songs. You know what? That's a disservice to Hackett. He's a good songwriter. He's a good guitar player. He knows what he wants. He just wasn't strong enough to give his opinions to everybody because he felt that there were other dominating forces in the band. And Gabriel has also said the same thing. So you know what? I think that this was a good effort on their part. Would it have been stronger with Hackett involved? I think so. But I do think that the fact that they discount Hackett's contribution to the band at this point and going forward, they've always discounted his contributions, I think is stupid because he was just as integral as the rest of them. You know what I mean? This album, back on the main track here, this album is a good album. It's melodic, it's proggy in spots. Is it one of their strongest albums? No, I think at this point, after losing Hackett, they were trying to find themselves. I do think that they hit the mother lode, pardon the pun, with Follow You, Follow Me, but it is my number 6. So,
Well, Banks has said many times that one of the best things about it being 3 people is there were fewer people to please.
yeah.
So yeah, and when you look back on the earlier albums, you know, the confrontations and the bickering amongst the members of the band and whatnot, because I would imagine, Banks, Rutherford, and Collins were pretty much of the same mind. So yeah, it made that aspect easier.
Yeah, there was one other thing. Hackett also felt that they were being very hypocritical because they were supportive of Collins being in Brand X, but they weren't really supportive of him taking time off to do a solo album when he wanted to. So, in his mind, they were being extremely hypocritical. I don't know. How can you go on TV or go on interviews that are going to be broadcasted and say that, yeah, he was a part of the band, but you know what? When he was gone, it really didn't matter. Like that would piss me off.
Sure.
As an ex-band member hearing this, like, okay, I'm done with you then. I wouldn't even want to be in the same room with you after that. Because you're discounting what I can contribute as a musician, in that respect. So anyway, that's
If I may
my rant.
play devil's advocate
Go
to
on.
continue the rant just a little bit, I will grant you that Tony and Mike and the boys have a history of being really insensitive when it comes to comments about people in the band. I mean, they were not very caring when Peter was going through the issues when his first daughter was born and
Yeah.
the wife was having trouble with the pregnancy. And they kind of go on saying, yeah, that was not our finest moment. We're kind of ashamed about how we acted in that. And some of their comments on Steve Hackett make me think about that. However, when I think about what Steve Hackett was doing around the time of, let's say, Wind and Wuthering, Trick of the Tail, um, clearly the stuff that he contributed to Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering were really, really strong.
Yeah.
Um, um, but that was given what I've heard of Hackett around that time, and all I can really judge on is Voyage of the Acolyte, just because I haven't heard the other solo albums that come
Mhm.
after that. I get what Tony's saying about, bits being contributed. And I obviously the things that they stuck on the Genesis albums are from Steve are really, really great. I love those contributions. I mean, things like Entangled, portions of 11th Earl of Mar, and then Unquiet Slumber in That Quiet Earth. Um, really, really great. But I kind of get where they're coming from about bits. Because if I look at Voyage of the Acolyte, to me, that's kind of evidence of like there's elements in there that are really, really strong. But as songs that I really want to listen to and sit down and sink my teeth into, it just kind of is a little wanting to me. Not as wanting as a curious feeling, but kind of wanting anyway.
Oh my God, talk about a pimple on the butt of humanity. Jesus, Murphy. I mean,
I thank you, Bill, for the
there you go. Yes. All right. Well, I
that
mean,
that's my devil's advocate rant.
Just to add a final bit on this bit. Uh, Speaking of bits, I actually did read a quote from Steve himself recently that he essentially admitted that back in those days, he often did exactly that in the band, contribute bits rather than full fledged songs. So he supports the case himself, apparently.
okay. All right. Moving on to
But some
number
of the bits that he contributed are epic. I mean,
are
Fly on the
fantastic.
Windshield. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And him and
So,
Tony together are pure magic when they combine. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yep.
It was, Banks did say that he did regret Steve leaving in that he had an ally in the band that he could go, he would like to go off and do weird little arrangements on songs. And Hackett would join him in these little weird explorations. And he could sort of pull the band left, into a different direction with Hackett's approval and support. But now, when Hackett left, it was basically down to the three of them, and he's kind of outnumbered when you wanted to go off and do something that was considered a bit off or a bit odd in a different time signature or whatever. Where, you had Rutherford and Collins sort of, you know, uh, planting him in the middle of the road kind of a thing. He couldn't go off and do little explorations after Hackett left. But no, I remember these comments that were said by Rutherford and Banks, and it's just like, if I'm hearing this, I wouldn't be exactly pleased. I'd be quite pissed off, really. I mean, you were telling me that I didn't contribute as much as I should have, or as you wanted me to. So, but anyways, we must carry on, ladies and gentlemen, over to Bill for number 5.
all right, this was originally my number 4. I flipped it a few days ago on re-listening, but again, it's the splitting hairs thing. It could easily be the other way. They're neck and neck. I also have a different cover, Jim, on the CD.
Mhm.
It's one of the cool things about Abacab with its various cover designs. Uh,
There they are. I think I had the orange one when I bought the original vinyl, or
Now,
peach,
I'm not
whatever you
sure
call that
which
color.
version was released in Canada, but of the cover. But okay.
I like the fact that they had the variety, though. It's
Yeah.
yeah, and this is a very very 80s album cover. This and the opening drums on Abacab scream, "We are now in the 80s," and that's a good thing. I mean, I love the 70s, but one of the things I love about this band is that they continually evolved. Whether everybody likes where and how they evolved is a whole different story, but they
Yeah.
didn't stay in one place. And I really appreciate artists like that. Uh, Abacab, yeah, it was kind of my entry too. It was when I was living in your neck of the woods. I was in Vacaville, California back in 81, 82, when this album was all over the radio with the title track, No Reply at All, and Man on the Corner being played a lot. And yeah, I enjoyed all of them. No Reply at All is top 5 Genesis song for me. It's a perfect pop song. And I think it might be my favorite vocal ever from Phil. I think it's really in the sweet spot. He doesn't over sing it. He's just really emotional, but he knows what he's doing at this point. I appreciate, obviously, the stuff, those albums haven't come up yet. So obviously I like them quite a lot and what Phil did with his voice there. But I think he's a better singer on Abacab. He's more mature, more knowledgeable about how to sing and what he can do with his voice and his range. And what he does on No Reply at All, especially when they get into that little bit, the maybe deep down inside. Oh my, wow.
Yeah.
Gets me in the feels big
on
time.
the bridge, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yep.
again, you said the bass, amazing. Yeah. The Phoenix horns, it's so tight. It's so catchy. It's just, there's nothing I would change about this song. Absolutely brilliant.
Mhm.
But there's a whole album besides that song. Yeah, the title track, I love it. I love the jam. I love the fact that these guys who so meticulously planned their songs and were such meticulous songwriters that they had half of the song as just a jam in the studio that they didn't write
Yeah.
down every note. And that's kind of awesome. And that's kind of the whole point of this album. And one of the things I especially love about it is that they intended to not make a Genesis album. They intended to break from the past, which they still had bits and pieces. Me and Sarah Jane definitely has some of the old Tony Banks, old school magic. And it's also another one of Tony's fantasy woman songs. This
A
one
little
at the end of
apocalypse
the
thrown
world.
in there too.
What is it?
With a little apocalypse thrown in there too.
Yeah,
End of the
exactly
world
so.
stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He puts his fantasy women in interesting situations. I will give him that. And again, Tony has the best lyrics on the album, I think. He does Me and Sarah Jane, he does Keep It Dark, and he does Dodo Lurker. Those are all Tony lyrics. They're all together in the midsection of the album. Keep It Dark. That one was a sleeper for a long time. That's one of my favorites now. I love the story of that album, of that song. I mean, it sounds great, but lyrically, the idea that this guy has been essentially taken away to paradise, but he has to come back and he has to lie about it. That's kind of tragic. He has to make up this story and he can't tell anybody why. I want to know why he can't tell anybody about this paradise that he's been to. Because it just breaks my heart that this poor guy can't go back and can't share that. So yeah, it's a really cool Tony lyric. Kudos, Tony, again.
I think I know why.
Why?
Well, I think in the context of the story, these beings who've shown him this world, this possibility, they're afraid that if more people found out about them, then they'll try and find them and try and ruin what they consider as their utopia.
That's a fair point. That definitely puts a different spin on it. Cool.
Yeah. But
which
it's all
would make
conjecture.
it even more politically motivated than I would have thought originally, too. Kind of a statement by Tony there. I don't know whether he intended that, but it's definitely in there now that I think of it. Yeah, now that you mention it. All right, Dodo Lurker. This is one of those that people say, yeah, the prog's still there. I don't know if I'd call it prog or not, but I don't really care if it's prog or not. It's just cool, weird Genesis experimentation. And again, this is Phil coming up with his new vocal range, with his voices. Yeah, he's all over the place on this song vocally. He plays characters, and considering that he was an actor, he brilliantly throughout his career brought that acting into his vocal performances.
Yeah.
That was a great strength for him as a singer and as a band leader, frontman. Um, let's see here. Um, oh yeah, Tony claims he doesn't know the answer to the riddle, "Who am I?" But I think we all know the answer is a submarine. Yeah.
Okay.
Those who know know.
It's a double album, yes.
Uh, who done it? Lots of people hate it. I don't. I think the lyrics are kind of meant to be nonsense, and again, that goes back to the Abacab, the title track lyrics. Outside of Tony, who can't help himself telling stories, a lot of these lyrics on here are kind of not necessarily as deep. Um, so yeah, the lyrics in this song, they're not meant to be taken seriously. They're meant to just be another instrument, essentially. And I think it works. It's almost, I don't know if I'd call it new wave, but it's very 1981. And it sounds like nothing they'd ever done before. I get why people who want Tony to, do something like One for the Vine might be a little distracted by the sound of this song.
Yep.
Man on the Corner, simple. The drum machine rears its head for better and for worse. I think it works well on Man on the Corner, though. It seems an odd choice when you have a brilliant drummer like Phil in the band to use a drum machine, but whatever. It's an artistic choice, and again, it works. It's one of Phil's lyrical themes that obviously he would continue talking about homeless people, essentially. And I find where is it at? Another record, I believe, also hints at discussions of homelessness. If you dig into the lyrics
Mhm.
on that a bit, but really, like it or not, another record that to me is where the album loses speed. I like both songs well enough, but compared to the rest of the album, they're just kind of there. Though there is um, a synth harmonica on another record, which I think is a bizarre but cool choice. I'm glad they only did it once. But this song is kind of neat, just because who would think that Tony Banks would do a synth harmonica? Not me, that's for sure. So yeah, really, it was those last two songs though that finally knocked this out of my number 4 and put it back to number 5. But overall, though, I absolutely adore this album, no matter what the cover looks like. Yeah, it's I love it. Abacab is number 5.
Okay.
Good dissertation.
Thank you.
Okay. And that was only
Well
part
said,
one.
sir. Yeah.
Only part 1.
Okay. Down to Ken. You're number 5.
Number 5, A Trick of the Tail. Album's got a strong trio opener with Dance with the Volcano. Entangled is so good. Squonk. Yeah. And then second side with the Trick of the Tail and Los Endos. That's some good eating right there. So yeah.
Yum, yum. I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Number 5 for
Looking
me.
to the point. Over to Jim. Yes.
All right. Number 5 for me is Foxtrot. You've got epic cosmic rock, medieval flavorings, music hall comedy, 12 string and guitars and dripping mellotrons. And that's just in one song. But really, if you kind of think of side one, those all apply too. Watcher of the Skies, very epic and cosmic. You got the medieval flavorings of Timetable, your little music hall social commentary comedy with Get 'Em Out by Friday. Can Utility and the Coastliners, which the more I listen to that song, the more I love it. At first, I didn't really connect with it when I first heard it, but it's just grown on me in leaps and bounds over the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah, Horizons, I kind of put that aside earlier with and didn't mean to dismiss the song. I mean, it's a lovely little instrumental piece, and as we've kind of talked about before, Armando, it's almost like an introduction to Supper's Ready. So you can kind of see side two as either, one song or not. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, for me, Foxtrot, like I talked about before, is kind of serves as the big brother to Nursery Crime. But
Yeah.
I think I've kind of beat that fox to death. So that's my number 5, Foxtrot. Really great. Again, manner of degrees at this point, ladies and germs.
Yeah. Splitting by a hair for those of us who have hair. Um, ladies and gentlemen, two of a perfect pair. My number 5 is Foxtrot. And for the record, we did not go over our lists with one another prior to the taping of this extended episode. Foxtrot, you know, what can be said? What Jim said basically.
Right.
But I think that even though it was only a year apart, I think that this shows a maturity from moving on from Nursery Crime, Watcher of the Skies. I mean, the Mellotron intro and like, come on, it's just it's dripping wall to wall and bloody hell, wall to wall Mellotron on the intro. Um, and this was where, doing it live, P. Gabriel was wearing the bat wings and the fluorescent makeup and the whole bit. This was where he was introducing his, you know, astral, like his traveler from another realm kind of persona kind of thing. Um, Get 'em Up by Friday. I hear a kind of a swing time signature on the drums for that. Ken can sort of correct me on that if I'm wrong. I do hear like a swing kind of a drum pattern on that. I do like that. But it's got to be said, Supper's Ready, the centerpiece of this whole thing. Side two, sorry, starts off with the beautiful, Bach borrowed Horizons from Steve Hackett. Just a beautiful acoustic piece. Just to me, very memorable. Just a lovely piece of music. Supper's Ready as a whole, 22 minutes and 54 seconds. They purposely sat down to write a sidelong epic, and they wrote it. I mean, I've told you about the story in the Baker's Dozen episode about part of the inspiration for Supper's Ready, and it is just amazing. Every section of it, Lover's Leap, Willow's Farm, How Dare It Be So Beautiful, Apocalypse in 9/8, just that this whole piece works as a sidelong epic. And yeah, I mean, it's gone up. This was going to be around number 14 or 13 on my list. But the more I listened to the album, it was like, okay, I'm getting this now. I'm understanding this more. Like I'm taking my lunch with me and going on a journey with Supper's Ready here. Like, it is just so dense and layered, and again, dripping with Mellotron, as we've said before. I think it's a fantastic piece of work. That alone makes it my number 5, the album itself. So, yep, Foxtrot number 5 for me.
Can I add 2 quick things?
Go for it.
All right. So I think a lot of the credit for how epic Supper's Ready is goes to Phil Collins, because I understand that he is the guy that sort of came up with the bridging material to figure out how to segue
Oh
each
yeah.
piece into the next.
Okay.
So that's major kudos to him without taking away the unbelievable epicness of Apocalypse in 9/8
Yeah.
and the concluding section. I mean, I think Collins gets a lot of credit for the glue that makes that whole thing work.
Oh yeah.
Last thing, you were talking about Watcher of the Skies, and it reminded me to really encourage people, if they have not heard the snippet of Watcher of the Skies that's on Three Sides Live from the '76 tour with Phil and Bill Bruford double drumming their way into this orgasmic cacophony.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you haven't really heard Genesis
Yeah.
until you've heard that.
Okay.
So maybe that goes against what my recommendation that we talked about earlier. Maybe the recommendation is not Behind the Lines, Duchess, and guide vocal, but maybe it's that portion of Watcher of the Skies,
Okay.
just
Okay.
to separate the children from the adults.
All
I would
right.
answer that, but that would lead into a whole other hour-long discussion. So I'm gonna stay mum at the moment.
Okay. Okay. All right. Moving on to number 4. Thanks. Thanks, Jim. Moving on to number 4, Bill.
All right. Number 4, which was my number 5, which it's essentially tied with Abacab pretty much. I'm finally getting to Genesis, the Shapes album, 1983. Yeah, I love every song on this album. Yes, even that one. Even that one. You know the one.
Side
It's
2,
no
side
fun,
1.
but it is fun. Is it politically correct? Oh dear, it wasn't even politically correct back
Hell
then.
no.
And the video made it worse.
Oh,
But
indeed.
we're talking Ken has mentioned an idea for an episode upcoming, and well, just let me say this particular song might be one of my choices for that episode. um, yeah,
Okay.
I almost feel like anytime I say how much I love Illegal Alien, I have to defend myself for obvious reasons. I think it's musically brilliant. If you just set the lyrics aside, set the cringy, not even borderline racist stuff in it, it's just musically amazing. They're still Genesis. They're all over the place on this song musically. They do so many cool things in it. It's not just a straightforward, boring song at all. Tony does so many cool things with the keyboards, and it's just fun. It's buoyant. It's full of life. If you trade out those lyrics and put in another set of lyrics, I think many minds would be changed about this song. That said, even though again the obvious, the sombreros and the fake mustache, all that, as cringy as that is and as misguided as it was at the time, still Phil still does a brilliant job at it. It's almost like defending a minstrel show or something, but the man's an actor and he acted that part. And at that time, really, that was kind of common. So we're looking at it with 2024 eyes. Now it's a bit different than it was in 1983. Like I
I
said,
think you have to put it in the context of when it was
Yeah.
released. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's like,
So yeah, I'm an illegal alien lover. Sorry. Hate on me all you like.
You're holding on to your card by a hair. I'm telling you right now, your membership.
Well, it's an illegal alien, not a legal alien. So,
Okay.
At least it's not Alien Afternoon.
this is true.
Hey.
All right, but that's just one song on the album. That's yeah. Mama. Yes. Phil listening to Melly Mel, Grandmaster Flash, and the Furious Five.
Oh yeah, the message.
Oh, yes, the message. And I love the message. I'm a big fan of the message, which also has some not so politically correct lyrics in it. So there you go.
It's true.
But yeah, I love the fact that Phil just copped to that. Yeah, we got that. Took it straight for Melly Mel. Yeah, that was where I got that laugh. But again, Phil the actor coming forward in this song. I love the exotic sound of this. It sounds not quite otherworldly, but
Eerie.
yeah, it sounds like it's coming from the jungle somewhere. And you don't necessarily want to know what you're going to find in that jungle. I won't even get into some of the lyrics here and the connotations of what he's might be singing about, but
it's a family show.
Speaking of cringy lyrics, yeah. That's all. Yeah. It shocked me when I found out that was their first top 5 hit here in the States. I assumed that one of their previous hits had gone that far, but no, this was kind of the one that took them to the next level, surprisingly. Yeah. I've always liked it, never loved it. I enjoy singing along with it, but it's never been one of my favorites. So I get maybe that's kind of why it surprised me. It's a good, serviceable, solid Genesis pop song. But I think No Reply at All destroys it. So I think that should have been a much bigger. Yeah. Home by the Sea, second Home by the Sea. You guys said all that needs to be said. Brilliant. Love it. All of it together. Taking it all too hard. Yes. Beautiful ballad. Just a job to do. Is the requisite rocker on the album, and it, as far as I know, it's still played on rock stations today. I don't know. I haven't listened to the radio in so many years, but it used to be played incessantly. Because yeah, that song kicks. It rocks hard. That if Disturbed was actually wanting to cover a Genesis rocker, I think they might have been better served by this one. But they
Yeah.
don't need to. Don't get any ideas, guys. You've done enough damage with your Simon and Garfunkel monstrosity. No, that's enough said. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, Silver Rainbow. No idea what it's about, but it's a cool song. A lot of the old school fans love it because it is the proggy song and it has the weird lyrics and kind of makes them feel a little more at home as Genesis is drifting into new things in the 80s. It's going to get better. That is one of my favorites on the album. I'm not going to throw out wrong information here, so I can't remember the specific instrument. I believe maybe a synth bass, some kind of keys. It's not, Mike's not actually playing bass on this song.
Yeah, Tony's got the synth bass, yeah.
Yeah, I always gave Mike credit because I love that bass line on this song. That's what drives this song. It's very subtle but melodic. If you just listen to that when you listen to the song next time, just concentrate on that. It's why I always thought it was Mike because it's the kind of thing that he would do. It's that background stuff that carries the song without really drawing attention to itself.
Mhm.
That, and I like the lyric. It's a good album closer because it has such a positive message. And
Yep.
sometimes, you know what? It's good to have those messages, those reassuring. I mean, it's going to get better. It's right there in the title. You know, the world can be a rough place sometimes. So, yeah, it's good to have something that says, wait a minute, maybe it's not so bad. So, yeah, kudos to them for that one. Yeah,
Yeah. I
I
wish they
love
would
the
have
book.
done that one more live.
Yeah, me
It's
too.
going to get better. I mean, maybe Phil's falsetto was just too blown out by that point after, you know,
Very possible.
that tour to do that more. But yeah, that's great. I was just going to ask regarding it's going to get better. I live clips. What's Daryl doing during the song? What's Mike doing? Are they both doing the rhythm guitar thing and while Tony's got the synth bass going?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever actually seen any live clips of that song, but now you got me curious.
We'll have
Well,
to dig into that.
it's generally been known that Daryl Sturmer would usually play bass for the later Genesis stuff and would play guitar for the Steve Hackett era stuff. So
Hmm.
I would imagine he's playing the bass.
Maybe he's doubling what Tony's doing.
Could be. Could be. All right. Interesting number 4. Okay. All right. To Ken, number
Okay.
4.
My number 4 is The Wind and the Wuthering. I don't mind Your Own Special Way so much. Uh, the album just has so many other really wonderful songs. Blood on the Rooftops, Afterglow, we've talked about those. What Gorilla, the 17th Earl of Mar. This and Trick of the Tail together, they're both released in 76. I kind of wonder if, what was written for which album, that maybe um, they, in writing the albums, they wrote them both at the same time. I don't know. Um, but I really like Hackett's work on this. Well, actually, for all of them. But some of the Hackett's contribution, especially when I hear that nylon classical guitar, just adds another dimension to it. So yeah, and always love an 8-string bass guitar, that Mike was playing. So it always has that unique flavor to it. So
Yep.
yeah, and Afterglow is one of my favorites of all. So yeah, Wind in the Wuthering. That's some more good eating.
That was a prolific time for them because not only do you have Trick of the Tail and Wind of Wuthering, but you get an EP out of that too if you look over
Yes,
Bill's
yes,
shoulder.
yes.
Yep.
Now, the quality of the EP is another question that's up for debate. But
This is
there's a
true.
lot of argument on that,
Yeah.
even among the band members, as Phil famously hated Match of the Day.
All right. Jim, over to you. Number 4.
My number 4 is Selling England by the Pound. And I think that amongst the four of us, I'm the guy that's ranking it the highest. Um, except for After the Ordeal, I absolutely love this album from Peter's vocal beginning to his, multi-tracked vocal ending on Isle of Plenty. Um, if I believe on one of the episodes we did about Close But No Cigar, I think this was one of my albums that was almost perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, After the Ordeal to me is just where everything falls apart. It's like there's a lack of a musical idea there, or there's a lack of a strong musical idea. I think they've like trying to cut and piece two or three different things together, and it just doesn't hold up for me. Um, Again, I think if they took that out, it would be a much stronger album. I think it would be perfect. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay.
My number 4, Selling England by the Pound.
Fair enough. Fair enough. My number 4, ladies and gentlemen, Wind and Wuthering. Fantastic album. It's been called by the band as a very romantic album, in terms of the lyrical content and the compositions. And again, uh, what to say about this album? Um, this is the second album released in '76. Compared to A Trick of the Tail, to me, the compositions on here are more intricate. They're more multi-layered, multi-sectional. Um, Trick of the excuse me, Trick of the Tail for the large part is more linear, more straightforward, like A to B to C to D kind of thing in terms of its arrangements. Um, Songs that stand out on this album for me, yes, I do like Your Own Special Way. I really do. I think it's fantastic. Even though it only reached number 62 on the charts, 11th Earl of Mar, One for the Vine, Blood on the Rooftops, What Gorilla, which is, Phil Collins' exploration into jazz fusion, as I look at it, as I see it. Afterglow, come on. I mean, like, from the standpoint of it being just a pure and simple romantic love song from a husband to his wife, or wife to her husband. It is, you know, in this case, a perfectly crafted song. And when they would do it live as a part of the medley, as they would do it, I mean, it would be just the perfect capper, to the main part of the show before they went into the encores, kind of a thing. Um, Again, Mellotron galore, on this album and this track. Uh, I've I've always seen this album as a winter album in terms of its composition and the arrangements. And they recorded this in Holland. They were isolated. And according to the band, aside from it being recorded in Holland for tax reasons, they found themselves, the fact that they were isolated where they were recording, they found themselves with nothing to do but to get down to work and finish this album. And it is it is a fantastic piece. 9 tracks that really don't fail on any level. I mean, one song or two may stand out more than others to some people, but to me, this is a strong album compositionally. I think it's great. That's why it's my number 4. Ladies and gentlemen, down to our top 3. Over to Bill.
Right. Come along, Cynthia. Now it's time to defend my beloved nursery crime.
Oh Lord, here we go.
The table is set.
So this CD is very egregious what it does to the cover. You probably can't see the record back there very well, but right above my finger is a head, a severed head. You can't really see it on here. They did this cover dirty. Unacceptable. But it's all right. I still have, my parents' old cutout bin copy. All right. Nursery crime. Why do I love this more than Foxtrot? Why is this my number 3?
In 1,000 words or less.
Okay.
Let's go less.
All right.
I'm glad you said it.
I do think of this as the sibling album, obviously, to Foxtrot. And well, anybody who's been paying attention here knows what my final 2 are. And those are also sibling albums. Those 2 sibling albums are much closer for me, obviously. These were quite a few spaces apart. Yeah. I think what separates this one from Foxtrot is that it has a theme throughout. It has a sound throughout that's consistent. It is like it's a series of gothic horror stories, fantastical gothic horror stories. If you get into the lyrics of each of these songs, there's a lot of old world frightening stuff. The sort of thing you would expect to see in some foggy swamp, people telling scary stories. It's very old world kind of horror. It's the sort of, Dracula, Frankenstein's monster sort of old world horror. There's no Stephen King nonsense or anything here. This is the good stuff. And this is one case where, we were talking previously about long albums and how Genesis mostly managed to make them work on vinyl with exceptions. This one's not a long one. This one's 39 minutes. And yet, oddly, the sound is kind of crap. But I think that's a strength. Muddy is good for this. Murky is good for this. The production fits the mood. It fits the stories. It fits the vibe. This is a case where poor production actually helps for me.
Okay.
So, I mean, Phil's drums, you can tell he's a wonderful drummer already, but his drums are mostly muted on this because of the production. But it works. I don't think I want him overpowering everything in these stories. Yeah, obviously the big songs here have been mentioned. Hogweed, Musical Box. The Musical Box is interesting because it might have as many as 7 songwriters involved, which is a record for the band. That's including Ant Phillips, who helped create the original genesis of the song. Mick Bernard, the interim guitarist, also wrote a section of the song, and then Hackett came in and finished it off as far as the guitar goes. And then you have the other guys adding all their bits. So this is really Genesis gumbo here, their little hobo stew. And I think that's one of the reasons why Musical Box works so well, why it's almost the representative track for this band, at least in their early years. But some of the other songs, let me consult my notes. I think Seven Stones is absolutely brilliant and quite memorable. It's another Tony lyric. I can hear it clearly in my head. The changes of no consequence. Pick up the reins from nowhere. And that's Phil jumping
Ladies
in.
and gentlemen, catch Bill at 9:00 tonight.
Yes. But
The
Phil is all
Starlight
over this
Lounge
album.
yeah.
Vocally, it's his first Genesis album. So obviously the drums are a thing, and Peter's still the lead here. but Phil doubles so much. Phil harmonizes, Phil adds in and plays characters. I think his vocal addition here are very unsung and they need to be pointed out because he deserves it. He adds quite a bit. There are times he even overpowers Peter, especially on Harold the Barrel. I think Harold the Barrel is also brilliant. Lyrically, I think it's a great little satire. I know a lot of people are not comfortable with lyrics about suicide, but I'm a fan of, don't try suicide and I think I'm going to kill myself and all these things. I like that kind of dark, humorous way to approach, you know, dark subjects, essentially. It takes the sting from them. Harold the Barrel, aside from its lyrics, is cool because these guys work so well together vocally and they each play characters. And it's magic. It's like what would happen if Emerson, Lake, and Palmer actually made a joke song that worked. This is like,
That would be something.
Sheriff Benny the Bouncer, but done better.
I will concede that they do a comical song better than ELP does. I will say that.
Yeah, really, you dig into the lyrics and the performance. There's so many details. It's a very dense song. It's not one that I got initially or even liked initially. It bugged me at first for the longest time. So it was a long-term project. Oh yeah, and back to Seven Stones. The whole point of the song lyrically is that everything is random, everything is chaos. If you dig into Tony's lyric on that song,
Nothing means
no
anything.
consequence, pick up the reins from nowhere. But there's individual stories within the song, and there's this old man who's kind of taking everybody for a ride by the end of it all. Let's see here. For Absent Friends is notable because Steve and Phil are making their mark here as new members of the band. It's a short and sweet little tale of two widows reminiscing. Essentially, it's a breather, but it's nice to kind of welcome these guys to the band, and it works well as a rest between the musical box and Hogweed because those songs are so huge. Harlequin. Harlequin it was a Mike song essentially. Ant helped out, but Mike said he's not a fan of his lyric here. I kind of disagree. I think it works rather well. There's lots of great 12-string guitar on here. But again, it's between Harold the Barrel and the Fountain. And I'm going to correct Jim's pronunciation here because it's just this year that I had to correct my own. It's the Fountain of Salmacus.
Oh, Salmacus. Okay.
Yeah, for decades, I've said Salmacis because I'd never heard it pronounced. I actually, dug into it and, okay, I've been wrong for since at least the 80s.
I've said Salmassis all the time, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's an easy. How often do you actually hear people say the title of some of these songs?
Doesn't come up in conversation very often.
No. Exactly. But yeah, that's another horror tale, the tale of Hermaphroditus, and what happens there is not quite as complex as The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and Rail's misadventures, but it's not far behind.
Right.
But that Mellotron opening, Watcher on Foxtrot gets all the credit. It was born here. This is every bit as glorious. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if I've properly defended this well enough to make you gentlemen rethink, but maybe at least you can see why I love this album so much. It's a unique journey into another world, and they never quite managed to do it in this way again. Foxtrot brought them a little more, not necessarily into the real world because they were still doing some odd stuff, obviously. I mean, the lyrics to Supper's Ready alone, but yeah, some of the magic was lost for me.
My question to you is, which did you discover first, Nursery Crime or Foxtrot?
Those two records behind me, they're both cutout bin copies from my parents' collection in the 70s, so it was pretty much simultaneous.
Gotcha.
I grew up with both of them sitting right in our living room in the stacks of records, and obviously as a kid you can imagine how covers like this would stand out and wow, what's going on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had cool parents. I'm just going to go out and
I
say
still
it.
do. They're still around,
Awesome.
still kicking. So
Lovely.
they may
Cool.
be watching this episode.
Cool. Cool. All right. Down to Ken.
I am here to defend, and then there were three.
Which
This
is
was
your number
my
3.
number 3. This was my entry into Genesis. I remember I bought it on cassette. I was doing a lot of um, driving and traveling in 78. That's the year I graduated high school. And I just remember, keeping that cassette in the player in the car while I was driving. To me, this is the last Genesis album to have that traditional Henschel production on. So to me, even sometimes I wonder if people hate this album just simply because um, they loved the previous guitar player, and so therefore, well, he's not in the band anymore, so I'm not going to like their songs. I don't know. I like I said before on another album, I don't have a dog in that hunt. Um, at the time, I didn't know any different. So anyway, but Undertow, Snowbound, Burning Rope, Deep in the Motherlode. This is where Phil started to break out a little bit vocally. Um, and of course, on the next album, Duke, he would be full blown, vocal monster. But so this has a lot of the old Genesis as far as the music and the feeling for me. Um, just expand a little bit more on the vocal side and pointing a little bit in the direction of where they were going to go next, even though it was going to be 2 years before the next album. But I still love it, and then there were three. I still do.
Okay. All right. Jim.
My number 3 is The Lamb Lies Down on a Broadway, as Phil has pronounced it in concert. I get that the story is impenetrable, but to me, it's impenetrable in the details. I think the overall arc of it, I kind of get. I don't know if I'd call it a journey of self-discovery. Um, Frankly, I'm not sure what I would call it, but without getting mired down in the details, I'm comfortable with where the story goes on this album. I think it works best on sides A and B, or disc 1, or the first, whatever, 11 songs for, streaming people. Um, Musically, it is very strong. I don't mind that Peter has, written all the lyrics to it. I love the variety that's on here. Like I said, I think that A and B sides on this are perfect. I think things kind of, get a little bit wanting in various spots between sides 3 and 4. But having said that, um, Anyway and the Lamia are two of my absolute favorite Genesis tunes, and yeah, I don't know. The more I listen to this album, the more I like it. Um, and I've never been able to connect to Tales of Topographic Oceans, Bill, like you were talking about that earlier. Um, but there's just something about this that, even though it's been kind of head scratching, like what is it all about? I've been drawn into it, and the more I listen to it, the more I like it. Um, Now, having said that, I've got to be in the right mood to dig into it. I mean, it's at 94 minutes. It's something you really have to invest in when you want to hear it. But I think it's worth the journey Absolutely. Yeah, number 3, The Lamb.
Okay. All right. My number 3, ladies and gentlemen, Abacab. Um, I've said before, this is an album that Genesis had to make. Um, they started to make a break. As I think about this, they started to make a break from their past um, with Duke, but this is the album that they pretty much um, cut ties with their, I guess, prog past in terms of songs like, No Reply at All. I love No Reply at All. I think it's a fantastically well-crafted pop song. Uh, the bass on this track alone is just sick. I mean, it's just like crazy. The title track is fantastic. Uh, heavy drumming done live as a two-prong attack with Jester Thompson when they do the intro, like the ending on it. Uh, it's just monster, and I've seen it done. It was just amazing. Uh, Me and Sarah Jane, beautiful done track. Keep It Dark. I've always loved that track. The story in the storyline that goes behind it, the keyboards on it, just great. Dodo Lurker again, going back into the prog-esque area of their catalog. Who Done It? Yes, I've grown to like Who Done It. You know, was it you or was it me or was it he or she? I mean, hello. I mean, they went for a new wave hook and they did it, right? Man in the Corner, again, another fantastic track, well crafted. I do agree with Bill that the album does sort of fall off a little bit with uh, Like It or Not, and another record. But, this album was a major seller in 81, and it was all over the charts, all over FM radio, pop and rock stations alike. You couldn't get away from it, even if you wanted to. You couldn't get away from it. And you know what? People say they may have sold out with this. Not yet. If they did sell out, it wasn't with this album. It was not with this album. And again, I'm going to put this question out there. What is wrong with a band wanting to try something different? Nothing. Plain and simple. Case closed. So that is my number 3, Abacab.
They definitely, progressed as far as moving forward and not kind of treading water.
Yeah.
Genesis definitely were progressive with Abacab. It's just that a lot of people felt like they were progressing away from progressive,
Yeah.
and they didn't like it. But I don't think this was pointed out yet, but I believe it was the president of Atlantic Records, Ahmet Ertegun, if I'm pronouncing that correctly,
Erdogan. Yeah.
who
Erdogan. Ahmet Erdogan.
Ertegun, who encouraged the band to include Who Done It.
Yeah.
He was the one who said, "Yeah, you need this on this record. This is great. This is
Because
blah blah blah." So
among the 9 tracks, this just stands out from the tracks in terms of everything about it. So I mean, yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, so yeah. All right. Bill,
All right.
number 2.
Final two, the other pair of siblings. 1A,
I see him up
1B.
there. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my number 1 stayed my number 1, but I almost changed it. It was very close. I almost flipped after all these years. But no, Wind and Wuthering is my number 2. So close though. I enjoyed this so much recently, just listening to these back to back. Frankly, yes, they could and should have been a double album, which is, that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, Wind and Wuthering takes what A Trick of the Tail did and narrows it down to something more specific. I think, like Armando said, it's a very wintry album. I think, yeah, Trick of the Tail, the songs were a little bit more all over the map. The songs on Wind and Wuthering kind of sound like they all fit together as part of this album, part of this whole sound
You
in
mean there's
ways
a
that
thematic
detail doesn't.
sense about it?
Yeah. Um, to go to the song that has been singled out so often, Your Own Special Way. I like Your Own Special Way, but I can see Jim's point. It does kind of go on, and there's not necessarily a lot to it. What's there is pretty and it works well enough within the context of the album. So I've never disliked it, but frankly, that song is one of the two reasons why this is still my number two and not my number one. The other reason you gentlemen will all certainly disagree with is Afterglow. Um, I don't dislike Afterglow, but I'll tell you why I have a theory. These albums are long. We've discussed that. We're talking both these albums are around 51 minutes.
Yes.
Back in the old days, 90-minute cassette tapes could only hold 45 minutes per side. I recorded both of these albums on each side of a 90-minute cassette tape. I didn't have
So you left out.
I didn't have most of Los Indos on A Trick of the Tail. So for quite a few years in my younger days, those ending songs were absent from my copies of these albums until I actually went and got official copies of them. So I think that has a lot to do with why Afterglow seems like an afterthought to me sometimes because it wasn't there for me. I blame the cassette tapes. That's but 11th Earl of Mar, One for the Vine. Wow, that's a knockout punch right out of the gate. Those two songs. And One for the Vine is that's Tony Banks in his absolutely gorgeous melodies. That's a Tony Banks song all the way through. That's what the man does best. Wow, it's that I can hear just his beautiful keyboard openings to that song, and yeah, it's very emotional. Even I don't even really care about the lyrics all that much, so he comes up with a nice enough lyric for it. But the song musically is just so gorgeous; it almost doesn't matter what the lyrics are in this case. I actually do like All in a Mouse's Night. I think it's musically great. It's kind of all over the map again, and I kind of think within the story itself, it kind of goes along. I think less Tom and Jerry and more again with those fantastical stories, with those almost horror stories. I think of it in those terms, but I also think that the cat was lying. I don't think the mouse was giant. I think the cat was covering his ass because he got beat up by a tiny little mouse or ran away scared from this mouse. That's my theory on the. Yeah, okay. There was no giant mouse at all. Yeah, and Blood on the Rooftops. Whew, wow. Yeah. Steve and Phil came up with a real beauty there, and it's just gorgeous to this day when Steve does it in concert. That's one of the highlights of his live shows. I've never been able to see him in person. I came close last time he came through St. Louis, but it fell through. But I have numerous Blu-rays of his tours of recent years, and they're
he's been very reliable at that. That's for sure.
Yes, he has.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, yeah, 1B. I love this album, pretty much top to bottom. So even though, yeah, the minor criticism of Your Own Special Way in Afterglow, it's very, very minor criticism in the grand scheme of things.
Great tell. What could your number one be?
I bet it's probably going to be Spot the Pigeon.
There you go.
Okay.
No.
There you go. There you go. All right. Okay, moving on. Ken.
My number two is Abacab. We talked a little bit about it on Twitter. Many of us feel that the track No Reply at All is just a perfect song.
Yeah.
However you want to categorize it, it's just unbelievable. Like Jim has said, almost for the bass line alone, it's incredible. So we've already talked about it. One thing that strikes me is, to me, it's almost like me and Sarah Jane and Like It or Not would have fit well sonically on Duke. Not as part of the suite, but sonically those songs would fit in well with Duke. So
Okay.
and I think we know what my number one is. So I don't remember Abacab, the album, Armando, being played as much uh, where I was. As you mentioned, you said it was all over the place, but
Oh yeah.
this is 1981, so I wasn't doing a lot of listening to radio at the time, so that was probably my saving grace. Uh, and I don't remember which album cover I had, but anyway, yeah, Abacab. That's the last for me, the last vestiges of any of their prog. And I feel several of them when I'm sitting listening to it with the headphones with my eyes closed, I still get little prog feelings from some of the songs. Not
Hmm.
Mhm.
as much, but still, I just think Abacab is a wonderful album, whether whether many Genesis out people like it or not.
Yeah.
I like it. I still enjoy it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I've got something to add to that, but I'll hold on to that. Jim, you're
You're
number
amongst
two.
friends.
No, 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 no. Okay, I'll make it quick. You were saying that this album, Ken, that this album holds the last sort of vestiges of their prog elements. And it just reminded me of Rush around 1979 when after they released Hemispheres, they purposely stopped doing the sidelong epic tracks and the huge, like 7 minute, etc., whatever, or 9 minute pieces, because according to Geddy Lee, they were tired of doing it and they wanted to reimagine what prog music could be. Did it have to be like 10 minutes or 7 minutes? Or could it be held within the confines of a 4.5 minute piece of music, or even 3 minutes? That's what they wanted to
Yeah.
challenge themselves to do. So if Rush did that and the fans were forgiving of that, why weren't the fans forgiving to Genesis for basically doing the same bloody thing?
because
I have a
Genesis
theory.
were commercially successful at it, and Rush were not. Go ahead, sorry.
Repeat, sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't
Good,
catch
good.
what you
Yeah.
said. Jim, Bill, repeat what you said. I didn't catch it.
Oh, I said because Genesis were commercially successful at it, and Rush were not, as far as singles, pop hits.
Okay. Okay, I get it. I get it. All right.
I think a lot of old school fans of the bands resent that kind of success just
Yeah.
reflexively for some reason.
Yes.
Okay.
They're just not hip or cool anymore.
All right. I'll shut up. Okay.
Well, no, I think that's it. It's a good comparison to make. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at Hemispheres and the two albums that followed. Permanent Waves definitely retains its progginess, even though the tracks are mostly shorter. It retains their creativity and it kind of retains the overall feel of what the band was going for. And then following that, you got Moving Pictures, which many people is one of feel it's one of the greatest albums ever.
Yeah.
If certainly if not the greatest Rush album. I think once you start moving from Duke and Abacab into Shapes and Invisible Touch and whatnot, not only were they more commercially successful, but they also were sort of changing their sound to be of the time.
Yeah.
You've got the Simmons drums, you've just got these production techniques that are more
Yeah.
tied to the time. And I
Yeah.
think that people just kind of revolted from that too.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Over to Jim for his next one. Number two.
Number two for me is A Trick of the Tail. Um, this is not quite 1B, but if it weren't for, Robbery, Assault, and Battery, which is not a bad song, it's just, I don't know. For this album, it's just not the music hall wink wink nudge nudge. I just feel like it loses something overall in the album to me.
Okay.
It kind of takes it in a whole nother direction, which to me just doesn't work. It's like loses the flow and the beauty of everything else that's in the album. I love the production. I love the fact that it's just, you put it on and in the first 10 seconds you're like assaulted by drums. I think that was just such a beautiful production touch, from Henschel and Collins to
Yeah.
push that. Entangled, I didn't mention this in our Baker's Dozen, and it kills me that I didn't. The
Because I
more I think
mentioned
about
it.
the song, yeah, the more I think about it, the more I absolutely love the song, from the dripping mellotrons to
Yes.
the, I mean, help me out here, Bill. Is the intro two or three 12-string guitars?
I don't remember. It's hard to tell.
Oh,
That's the cool thing about these guys. You can't always tell. And
yeah,
you even throw Tony in the mix there,
Yeah.
they're
Okay.
very good at disguising what they're doing.
they are. They are. But yeah, a trick of the tail, for me is a high water mark of a band that has a whole ton of high water marks. And as I kind of mentioned before, these top five are separated by just the smallest of degrees and,
Yeah.
hair splitting. So
Yeah. Yeah. Understandable. Understandable. My number two, ladies and gentlemen, Bill, you better run. Duke. God. Um, to me, this has always been a desert island disc. Uh, I love this album. I think it's fantastic. I think, oh my God, even hearing about how it was originally conceived to have, uh, as they call it, the Duke Suite, that it was going to consist of Behind the Lines, Duchess, guide vocal, Turn It On Again, Duke's Travels and Duke's End. I think that would have been a fantastic way to do it for side one. I still would like to hear how that would turn out. If there was an alternate version of this album made available, but I think it's just fantastic. I think the intro to Behind the Lines, the walls of synths that come in, the drumming, how it segues into Duchess, the story of this woman singer who hits the peaks and of her career and then crashes down just as quickly with her career. I mean, nothing is guaranteed in life except death and taxes. Um, how it segues into guide vocal, done very beautifully by Collins. Man of Our Times, Banks has said he's hated this song since the beginning, since they recorded it, that he can't stand it, that it's not one of Rutherford's best uh, musical moments. I think it's fantastic, even though the vocals could be a bit more prominent in the mix, because you've got this wall of or wash of synths that come in, right? And on the verses and stuff. But I think it's fantastic still. Misunderstanding is a pop track. This is their first major hit in North America on the charts. Good pop track, Heat Haze, I'm getting to love a lot more as I listen to it. Turn It On Again, done in 13/8 time as opposed to 4/4 time that Mike Rutherford thinks it's 4/4 time, even though it's not. Talk to Phil Collins about it. It's in 13/8 time. Um, I think that's a fantastic radio staple. It's always been on the radio since its release. The video is very memorable for me. Um, Alone Tonight, the record company wanted to release that as a single, as the first single. And the band said, "You're crazy. Turn It On Again," as a single. So they had to listen to them. Cul-de-sac is another good one. Please Don't Ask, which was originally going to be on Face Value, but it wasn't. It was kept for this album. Duke's
cul-de-sac.
Child. Hmm? No,
Oh, please
Please
don't
Don't
ask.
Ask.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Because I mean, this album came out like what happened was they were working on Rutherford and Banks were working on their solo albums, and Phil Collins was going through his divorce kind of thing. So he had come back from Vancouver. They were already working on their albums. He started writing stuff for what was going to become Face Value, and he decided to keep this for Duke. Duke's Travels and Duke's End. Two fantastic tracks to end off the album. Very, in my opinion, very dramatic, very cinematic, very grand in its production and its arrangement, very percussive. I've always loved this piece, these two pieces together. You cannot have one without the other, um, in my very humble opinion. I do think that this album, to start off the 80s, moves away from, and then there were three very cleverly, very uh obvious in a very obvious way. The production to me is fantastic, with the exception of the vocals of One Man of Our Times. Um, why didn't it make my number one? You'll soon find out. Moving over to Bill. Yes, Bill. It's my number two. It's my number two. There we go. Number one.
Yeah, of course, it's a trick of the tail. This was my number one album of 1976 by anybody. There was even a brief moment in time where this one surpassed Crime of the Century as my all-time favorite album by anybody. That didn't last. Crime of the Century is a little too perfect, but that's neither here nor there. We're here to discuss Genesis. Yeah, this it's not as cohesive again as I said about Wind and Wuthering, but I don't think it needs to be because all these songs are brilliant little stories all on their own. Um, the art is obviously a lot of fun with all the characters in the songs represented, and the interior package is similar. You get the lyrics, you get the little illustrations that go along with them, so it's pretty cool packaging. It's one of my favorites as far as their overall album presentation goes. Not quite Paul Whitehead level, but I'm a sucker for his cheap, crappy looking, sloppy work. It has a certain mystique, a certain charm.
Okay.
I know that's kind of a backhanded compliment, isn't it? That's...
Very much so. But go on.
Yes. Sorry, Paul. This album features my two favorite Genesis songs, so it's kind of hard to knock it out of the number one spot. My number two favorite is one Jim just discussed, Entangled, which is the perfect melding of Tony Banks and Steve Hackett. That alone is why those two belonged together as creators. Tony took Steve's wonderful guitar portion of this song and he added his own particular magic to it and took it to another world. And yeah, this is Phil's innocent vocal era where he's really just starting to find himself and still holding on to a bit of that Gabriel era sound. And it works for this album. Wow. It's pure otherworldly magic. Again, I've said that about a few things, but it's my top three in particular. I talk about them being otherworldly. They take me somewhere else. But my number one Genesis song, the one that really puts it over the top, is the one that closes side one. It's Madman Moon. That's Tony pure magic all the way. There's no Steve helping him there. There's no Phil or Mike helping him there. That's Tony. That's his baby, lyrically, musically, everything. And it's a masterpiece. It is a journey all unto itself. And I think it's really an unsung song in their catalog. Typically, I mean, they didn't even throw it in the live set. That's without opening this particular can of worms too much. That's one of the reasons that their live albums irritate me so much is the song selection. The fact that they had a brilliant song like Madman Moon and it was left all alone on this poor album and not done live constantly. Yeah, that still irks me a bit. But again,
okay, let me ask you about that, Bill. So realistically, how could they have pulled off Madman Moon live and have it approach anywhere near the grandeur of the studio version?
I mean, they did
Maybe they
Summer's
didn't
End,
have to.
surely they could do Madman Moon.
Well, I mean, there's parts where like Tony is like triple tracking himself on things. I think simply that they have run out of hands to tackle the keyboard parts, right?
Well, I mean, just a little caveat to add on to that. Maybe, I mean, maybe, you know, you could say ask the same thing about the Queen. Why didn't they do Love of My Life live the way they did in the studio? Because they couldn't pull a full size harp on stage for Brian May to strum or whatever to use. Do you know what I mean? So maybe the thing was to reimagine it for stage, and each version was its own animal. Do you know what I mean? Like its own entity.
Yeah, I'm not one to copy and paste what's done in the studio to
Yeah,
live,
yeah, yeah.
but I just think there's something about all the keyboard layers of Madman Moon that just would have made it really challenging to do.
Okay. Yeah. No, true. No, I didn't mean to cut in there, Joe. I'm sorry. I
It might
just
have been interesting to try to replace some of those keyboards with, say, more guitars from Steve and
Maybe some like 12 string,
yeah,
passages for things. Yeah, quite
could have
possibly.
been a different take. Yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, but
This
we
is
cut
this
you
is my
off. I apologize.
12 string, playing.
I caught that.
they could have, since Tony can also play the 12 string, they could have just gone with 3 12 strings and skipped keyboards altogether and really done a radical reinvention of it.
Oh,
Nah, Tony would have never stood for that.
Yeah.
No, 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 no.
That's a pipe dream.
You know what? It's been there's an interview that all five of them did with this, I guess he's a journalist, and it's been well documented by all four of them that Tony was a dominating presence in the band.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All
Yep.
from day one. So let's not beat around the bush. It's well known. So moving
He's
on.
the heart of the band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
obviously the trick of the tail. I won't belabor it further. I love everything about this album. So
Yep.
easily my number one.
Yep.
Anyone keeping score knows what my number one is. Sorry, Bill, but it's Duke. Duke, and actually Duke was one of my choices for during our 31 Perfect Albums series. Yeah, there's I like some songs better than others, but to me they're all good. Like I said, arguably there's a couple of tracks off Abacab that would fit sonically very easy into this, and that's okay. It just makes Abacab a little better as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, the Duke Suite is I'm kind of torn whether I would like to have heard them do it all as one side of an album as opposed to splitting it up. I don't know. I can't be objective about it because I've just heard the recorded or the release lineup so
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
that's just the way it's like this album I couldn't play on random because
Mhm.
they need to be in a certain order, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. I
But
get it.
so we've covered everything. Actually, probably my least favorite songs, although they're still good, is Misunderstanding and Turn It On Again. That's probably just because I've heard them so much, on the radio and
Overkill.
MTV at the time. But yeah, I can see, Please Don't Ask intended for the Phil Collins solo album because it fits in with that theme.
Yeah.
But it's a tearjerker of a song. Man, he's not just singing it, that's his
He's
heart.
living it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And having been through, grief of a breakup of a marriage, yeah, I get it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
definitely get it. But and then just the Banks's guide vocal on side one, just a little small song, but man, does it add a lot to it. And
Yes.
Duchess is just the story of so many rock stars, all melded into one. That story, struggling to make it to the top, and then trying to stay there and failing. So, but anyway, yeah, Duke is still remains my number one.
Okay.
Yep.
Just a little footnote, because they said in interviews, the one I watched recently, as recently as yesterday, that they didn't want to have the Duke Suite done on one side because they didn't want to have it compared to Supper's Ready. Guys,
Sure.
it was 8 years. Like, how many years
Yeah.
was it released
Yeah.
prior? I mean, a little side note. Supper's Ready, 1972. The Duke Suite, 1980. I think you could have gotten away with it. Do you know what I mean? It wouldn't have made a
Oh,
big
you're right.
difference. If it was like a year after, maybe, or even 2 years. But 8 years? Come on. I'm sorry. It's just,
Especially considering that by the time Duke came out, they had another generation of fans.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
A whole new generation of fans that wouldn't have made that comparison.
No,
But like I said, I made my own playlist, so I have my own Duke
I
Suite.
got you. I
Yeah.
got you. I got you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we must carry on. We're in the final stretch. Um, yes, over to the man of the hour, or many hours at this point.
It has been many hours. This is yes, we're into hour number 4 right now. 3.5 hours is what I have for us talking.
Editing.
Yes, the beauty of 2 parts and editing. My number one is Duke. Damn it. Now, what to say about it that hasn't been said already, considering that Armando and Ken and I just talked about it. I think the album needs the Duke Suite separated. And I think that's because songs like, we'll take the ones not in the suite: Man of Our Times, Misunderstanding, Heat Haze, Alone Tonight, Cul-de-sac, Please Don't Ask. They work better as kind of connective tissue in sort of keeping the album as a
Flowing.
cohesive whole. If they had all of those songs relegated to side two, I don't think they would come off as strong. I
No.
think that they would just be seen as individual little afterthoughts because the meat of the album is the Duke Suite, side one. I think, and that's not to disparage those songs. I love these songs. I mean, like Ken, this was on my 31 perfect albums. This is to me the only perfect Genesis album. Let the hate flow through you toward me. I get that I'm in the
Send your
minority
hate mail
opinion about that.
to.
Yes, Armando Venditti, in Canada.
Jim
Yeah,
Brecker at.
mhm. So I think Duke is the better for separating all of those tunes out. Um,
I
I think
agree.
it would have been I think it would have been tremendously unbalanced otherwise. It's neat that you can kind of have YouTube videos of the Duke Suite performed live. Okay, that's great. That's fine. Um, I guess the only other thing to kind of mention about this is that Phil swears up and down that when he was in his, alcohol induced, brand X induced heartbreak writing of songs, that, of which Misunderstanding and Please Don't Ask were among them. He swears that he presented In the Air Tonight to the band.
Yeah.
And
But
Banks says
Tony,
no.
yeah, Tony Banks says no because he's like, I know that if I heard it, I would have grabbed that sucker
Yeah.
because he, recognizes the power of it.
The hit
Um,
factor. Yeah.
yeah, and just going back to Please Don't Ask, I don't think there is a song in the Genesis catalog up to this point that is more genuinely emotional. I mean, we kind of, do it all the time. We talk about Mellotrons and they drip. To me, please don't ask drips with genuine heartbreak, emotion, longing. I
What
mean,
have you? Yeah.
first time I heard this, it's like, oh, good Lord, this is just a devastating song.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way to this day.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, Duke's Travels and Duke's End as an album closer, just phenomenal. And Bill, you had this at what, 11?
Yes.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, almost put it at 12 even. I almost put We Can't Dance ahead of it.
Oh, sweet
Okay.
Jesus in heaven. Turn in your card. My God. All
Yes,
right.
I think now that you realize you've stepped into the He-Man, Bill Schuster, haters club. Um, I'm sorry about that, brother, but yeah, you're amongst Duke's lovers here. So
I well remembered from doing the Perfect Album series. Yeah, I knew when I threw Duke out that early, you guys were going to be like, really? So,
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
kind of like I
That's,
was with Nursery Crime.
that's fair.
that's fine. That's fine.
That's the great thing about this band is that they've got, so much great material. And like we were talking about, this selecting these final five are just, splitting hairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, for those of us who have here. Um,
Let the hatred flow through you, like
Yeah, and I certainly don't begrudge anyone their choices because,
no, it's
as I
fine. It
said
is what it
earlier, it's
is.
all subjective. We all
That's
bring our own particular history and baggage into everything that we listen
but
to, and
that's what these
Yeah.
we
shows are
critique it.
about. It's just to give your opinion. Opinions are subjective. That it's not the be all and end all. Ladies and gentlemen, my number one is Trick of the Tail. Now, 1976 was a hell of a busy year for the band. Uh, just to put it in a bit of perspective, Trick of the Tail was released February 13th, 1976, and Winter Wuthering was released on December 17th, 1976. Now, I've said that for me, this album, out of all of them, as this was the first one I discovered, uh, full, like just to dive into it. And for me, it's more linear, like straightforward album than say the albums before, like Foxtrot and Lamb Lives Down on Broadway. I just think that this is a fantastic album. Um, Heavy as all get out. It starts off with Dance Off Volcano with the different time signatures from the 4/4 to the 11/16. Uh, with the drums, Entangled is a fantastic, you know, intricate, elegant track, in for 3/4 time, one of the few times that Banks and Hackett worked well together. And it ends, as I said in my previous episode, on the Baker's Dozen. It ends on an eerie note with those keyboards at the end of the track. Squonk, according to the band, it starts off seconds out. It's Genesis trying to be Led Zeppelin. These are the band's words, not mine. Fantastic track. Madman Moon, beautiful track from Banks. People kind of crap on robbery, assault, and battery. I think it's with everything that came before it. I think this is sort of like their um, stopgap. And we've lost him again. Um, I'm going to continue. Um,
Okay.
Ripples,
And there were three, yes.
yes, and then there were three. Ripples to me is another fantastic piece of work. Very, oh my God, again, very intricate piece of work. Just beautiful, work on Mellotron and the keyboards and the guitars, and a beautiful emotional delivery on the vocals done by Phil, by Phil Collins. A Trick of the Tail itself is, again, not as comical as Robbery, Assault, and Battery, but you know what? It still adds a bit of a lightness to the album. It's not always that serious, in terms of its arrangement and compositions, even the video for it, right? And it ends off with the powerhouse of Los Endos. I mean, this is Phil Collins drumming like his ass is on fire. I swear to God, he's just going for broke on the drums on this. Jazz fusion galore. Okay. And it's beautiful. It's powerful and very emotionally charged track, especially done live. Um, and I think that as the album to follow Lamla's done on Broadway, I think it is just brilliant and its execution, the way they were able to pull together and basically prove the critics and the naysayers wrong, that they could still continue on without Peter Gabriel.
And that's one of the things I was kind of trying to hint at with asking about, was Gabriel involved in doing the music during the portion of the Lamb? Because musically these guys carried on like there was no tomorrow. There was like the core of the stuff was still there musically, and with Henschel's production, it even kicked it up a big notch.
Yeah, no, he did pop in now and again into the studio to see what they were doing, but I don't think he contributed anything musically to the album. Um,
In fact, he was behind on the lyrics quite a bit, apparently, while they were barreling ahead with the music.
Yep, that sounds like Pete.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
A taste of the future.
yeah, no. I just think that for me, A Trick of the Tail has always been a favorite of mine, and I have an affinity for this album just because it's the first album of their catalog that I latched onto and I sunk my sonic teeth into, let's put it that way, in terms of listening to it as a whole. So I think it's
Ken's Zoom keeps crashing, and so he says, "I give up." So
okay.
we've lost Ken for the remainder of the episode.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that's my number one, A Trick of the Tail from 1976. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
Woo!
An extended episode of ranking the albums of Genesis. Please put down in the comments what your favorite albums are, all 15 of them, or top 5, top 10, doesn't matter. We just like to get your opinion and to find out what you think of this episode, as long as it's been. So, anyways, again, we had fun doing this, and we also wanted to mention that we are working on another episode. We are going to be doing a reimagining of Abacab, because there were some songs that were recorded during the sessions for Abacab, but were not included on the album. So we are going to be looking at these tracks, listening to them, and reimagining what Abacab could have been or should have been. So please stay tuned for that. That's coming up in the near future. Did either of you two want to add in comments or as parting thoughts?
Not necessarily. I think we've said so much.
Okay.
I think
All right.
so.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So for Bill Schuster, Jim Bricker, and the spirit of Ken Cheshire, who keeps coming back and forth.
Ken Hackett, who left the band.
Yes. Ken Hackett, yes, who left the band. Yes, for everyone here, and including Ken Cheshire, who unfortunately lost his Zoom connection, I'm Armando Venditti, signing off for now. Again, please click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content we've got coming up. We've got more show ideas to work on, and we will see you soon with more episodes. Have a good day. Bye for now.